Chapter 361. I don't know. Hua Jingyao didn't care about Su Qinghui. The two families were cooperating. For the sake of Su Qingsang's father, he would give him some face. However, it was impossible for Su Qinghui to bully Su Qingsang. I'm worried. Su Qingsang didn't tell Hua Jingyao about what happened in Japan. But now, Su Qingsang was worried that Su Qinghui would come to Xiang Kaiping because Su Peijian was beaten up. What are you worried about? Hua Jingyao sensed something different. Nothing. She decided not to tell Hua Jingyao. Su Qingsang shook her head, believing that Xiang Kaiping could handle it herself. Hua Jingyao narrowed his eyes and looked at her. His arms around her waist suddenly tightened. Tell me, what's going on? Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line and held Hua Jingyao's hand instead. Nothing. I just don't understand. What? Tell me, does my dad love my mom or my auntie? The auntie she was referring to was Li Qianxue. After calling her that for so many years, she couldn't change the way she addressed her. Moreover, Xiang Kaiping wasn't there now. She wouldn't be able to hear her calling Xiang Kaiping like that. You'll have to ask him himself. Hua Jingyao didn't see that Su Qinghui loved Xiang Kaiping or Li Qianxue. If he loved my mother, then why did he stay under the same roof with Auntie for so many years? If he loves Auntie, why is he pestering my mother now? Do you want to hear the truth? Hua Jingyao squeezed her hand with an unruly smile on his face. Speak. In my opinion, your father doesn't love anyone but himself. Su Qingsang pinched him and said, I think he's a philanthropist. I love my mom but I can't let go of Auntie. Are you saying that your father loves Su Peijian's mother? I don't know. Su Qingsang stopped walking and looked at the shadows of the trees in the neighborhood. But there's something that I've never told my mother or anyone else. What is it? What could he not tell Xiang Kaiping? Probably a few years ago. When I was in college, I went home to get something. Su Peijian and Su Yusen were not at home that day. When I came in, I heard that aunt was sick. I lived with the Su family and studied medicine, so I wanted to see her. Then I saw my dad. Li Qianxue had always been in good health. That illness was one of the few times that Su Qingsang could remember. She went upstairs and was about to go to Li Qianxue's room to take a look when she found that the door of Li Qianxue's room was not closed. She was sick at that time and her face was burning red. She seemed to be in pain on the bed. When she was about to go in, she saw Su Qinghui coming out of the bathroom. She didn't know what she was thinking at the time, but she subconsciously avoided him and hid by the door. However, that action of hers was unnecessary. At that time, Su Qinghui didn't have time to visit her. With a towel in his hand, he stood by the bed and stared at Li Qianxue's face for a long time. His expression seemed to be hesitating. Finally, he placed it on Li Qianxue's forehead. Actually, I've only seen my dad like that once. I don't know how to describe his expression at that time. In any case, it was very complicated. At that time, she didn't understand love, let alone love. She had a vague idea that Su Qinghui probably had feelings for Li Qianxue. Chapter 362. That was the only time. Later, when she left quietly, she secretly paid attention to the way Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue interacted. She found that Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were a respectful couple in front of old Master Li, but in private, he was as cold as he could be. He was so cold that she began to suspect that she might have been wrong that day, or that Su Qinghui felt that he hadn't tortured Li Qianxue enough, so he couldn't bear to see her sick and die. So, do you think my father loves Auntie? Are you trying to say that your father is a scumbag? Eating from the bowl, thinking about the pot? Hua Jingyao touched his chin and made such an annotation. Su Qingsang gritted her teeth and hit his chest hard. What are you talking about? She did think that Su Qinghui was not a good man. However, hearing Hua Jingyao talk about his biological father like that, she felt a little strange. Don't talk about my father like that. It was not good for Su Qinghui to hear it. Su Qingsang turned her face to look at him, and her eyes were a little teasing. If I say that again, you're a scumbag? Don't you men all like that? Eating from the bowl, thinking about the pot? Don't wrongly accuse me. Hua Jingyao held her body in his arms. I'm not included in the people you're talking about. You're not a man? Wife. Hua Jingyao's face was serious, but there was an obvious hint in his eyes. Tonight, you can fully experience whether I'm a man or not. Su Qingsang's face suddenly turned red and she was speechless. All right, let's go back. Don't worry, wife. Hua Jingyao didn't move, but instead pulled her back into his arms. I'm a narrow-minded person, so I can only accommodate you. Su Qingsang stared at him. In the night, Hua Jingyao's eyes were as bright as stars, and only her shadow could be seen in them. She felt as if her heart had been hit hard by Hu Jiniao, and her whole heart beat uncontrollably. Wife, I'm serious. Su Qingsang's face was burning. It was not the first time she had heard Hu Jiniao's confession, but it was the first time she had such a strong emotional fluctuation. She looked down and nodded. I believe you. What about you? Hu Jiniao lifted her chin and made her look at him. What about your heart? My heart. Su Qingsang didn't understand the love between a man and a woman before this. She once had a crush on a senior in high school, but then the two of them went to different schools, so it ended. She was busy studying in university and didn't have time to date. Being with Wei Lenin was just to get rid of the Su family, so it didn't count. Looking into Hu Jiniao's eyes, she subconsciously nodded and said, I'm also very narrow-minded. After pretending to be Hu Jiniao, she probably wouldn't be able to pretend to be anyone else. Now she was trying her best to put Hu Jiniao into her heart bit by bit. Hu Jiniao smiled. The corners of his lips were raised in a handsome and unruly way. He lowered his head and kissed Su Qingsang's lips. Su Qingsang's legs were a little weak, and she put her hands on his shoulders. Her response made his eyes heat up, and he was about to take another step further. Suddenly, a cat meowed from somewhere, and then a wild cat jumped out of the bushes. Su Qingsang was shocked. Only then did she realize that she had kissed Hu Jiniao in the garden of this neighborhood. Fortunately, there weren't many people around, or it would have been really embarrassing. Chapter 363. Hu Jiniao didn't object. Xiang Kaiping and Su Qinghui might not be done yet, but it was good to go back and take a look. If what Su Qingsang said was true, then the purpose of Su Qinghui's visit today was a little curious. Hu Jiniao had thought that Su Qinghui's behavior was a little strange, but now it came back to him again. He was thinking, what exactly is wrong? The idea that he had faintly thought about before surged into his mind again. While Hu Jiniao was still thinking, Su Qingsang had already pulled him upstairs, and at the same time the door of their house opened. Su Qinghui stood by the door and Xiang Kaiping was pushing him out. Su Qinghui raised his eyes and saw Su Qingsang's face. He was stunned for a moment. Not only him, but Xiang Kaiping, who was standing behind the door, also turned pale. Many years ago, Su Qinghui did something extremely crazy. It was a crazy thing that made him think about it from time to time. He felt happy but also a little hesitant. That year he accidentally had sex with Li Qianxue. To him this was just an accident. What's more, he didn't like Li Qianxue at all. She was fierce, domineering, and arrogant. He didn't like her very much. He had a childhood sweetheart, Xiang Kaiping. After having sex with Li Qianxue that day, he felt a little guilty and blamed himself. Therefore, when she got home, she treated Xiang Kaiping even better. Of course, he also needed to use this method to remind himself who he liked. Who was he going to marry? However, who would have thought that Li Qianxue would unexpectedly get pregnant just like that? What kind of person was Li Qianxue? At that time, she was the daughter of the Li family and the marketing manager of the Li Corporation. She had the means and the status. More importantly, she still had a father who doted on her like a jewel because her biological mother had passed away early. The Li family and the Chou family were the two largest families in Lin City at that time. They were family friends. At that time, half of the companies in Lin City followed their lead. As for the other companies, there was no need to mention them. If he didn't marry Li Qianxue, not only would he lose his job, but he would also not be able to stay in Lin City. He wanted to be tough for once, but at that time there were a lot of things to do at home. In desperation, he agreed to marry Li Qianxue. Although Su Qinghui had agreed to marry Li Qianxue, it was still hard for him to accept the fact. He could marry Li Qianxue and spend the rest of his life with Li Qianxue, but he couldn't swallow the feeling of being forced to marry someone else. Even if he couldn't swallow it, he had to. The wedding was held, and he and Li Qianxue became husband and wife. Not only that, but Li Qianxue's belly was getting bigger and bigger. A business of the Li Corporation that he had not been responsible for before was also given to him. He knew that this was another form of compensation from old Master Li. But that was not what he wanted. He was ambitious and wanted to stand out, but he didn't want to rely on women. Every day he was thinking about how to get back at Li Qianxue. Divorce? No, I can't. Bring down the Li Corporation? At that time he didn't have that kind of ability. Kill Li Qianxue? No. He wouldn't do anything criminal. Therefore he wouldn't even attack the Li group. The thought of stealing trade secrets had never crossed his mind. It was true that he wanted revenge, but he would never put himself in danger. He struggled every day, especially after he heard that Xiang Kaiping was also pregnant. Such thoughts grew like wild weeds. Chapter 364. All of Su Qinghui's revenge was just his imagination. He didn't have a plan. Until Li Qianxue gave birth to a daughter. It was such a coincidence. Li Qianxue's child was born at full term. However, Xiang Kaiping was not. Her body was weak, and she was born half a month early. The child was born one day after Li Qianxue's child. When he saw the child, he thought of Li Qianxue, who was still asleep because she had given birth to the child. A crazy and bold idea flashed through his mind. He didn't want to marry Li Qianxue, but he did. He wanted to marry Xiang Kaiping, but he could not. Li Qianxue, aren't you very capable? Isn't the Li family very powerful? If he took Li Qianxue's child away, what would happen to her? Old Master Li had been watching over his daughter. The child was in the nursery. The right time, the right place, and the right people were cooperating with Su Qinghui. He finally made up his mind. He carried Xiang Caiping's daughter into the nursery and took Li Qianxue's baby away. In fact, he had thought of even more ruthless ideas. It was to send Li Qianxue's child to the orphanage. He wanted Li Qianxue to regret it. But when he held the baby girl, he hesitated for a moment. No matter how much he disliked Li Qianxue, no matter how much he hated her, this child was still his. In the end, Li Qianxue's child was not sent to the orphanage. He asked someone to take care of him and hired someone to take care of Xiang Kaiping. Li Qianxue woke up the next day. The first thing she did after waking up was to see her daughter. Before he could name the child, old Master Li had given her a name, Peijin. Everything was a foregone conclusion. He had done a perfect job of stealing the dragon and changing the phoenix. A month later, he found an excuse to start a cold war with Li Qianxue. Then when she gave in, he carried Su Qingsang home. That was the darkest thought in his mind when he was young. Li Qianxue, aren't you arrogant? Li Qianxue, aren't you proud? I'll put your biological daughter in front of you and let you look at her every day, but you won't know her and you won't recognize her. I want you to treat your own daughter as an illegitimate daughter. If you make things difficult for her, you will be making things difficult for your own daughter. In fact, there was a time when Su Qinghui really wanted to see Li Qianxue make things difficult for Su Qingsang. Unfortunately, Li Qianxue was a very proud person. She didn't want to make things difficult for someone she didn't like. At most, they would just ignore him. But this was enough. Su Qinghui watched as Li Qianxue ignored Su Qingsang. He watched as she was considerate to Su Peijin, but never gave Su Qingsang a good look. He finally felt a lot better after being forced to marry her. After venting his anger, he began to worry again for a while. He was worried that Su Peijin would look like Xiang Kaiping. He was worried that Su Qingsang would look like Li Qianxue. In that case, Li Qianxue would definitely be able to tell. That was because Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping did not look the same at all. The two of them did not look alike at all. However, it seemed that even the heavens were on his side. As Su Peijin grew up, she looked neither like him nor Li Qianxue. Instead, she looked more like Su Qinghui's deceased mother. Su Peijin's genes had been passed down through generations, so Su Peijin couldn't be found to be similar to them at all. At most, her eyebrows, eyes, and demeanor were vaguely similar to his. That was all. However, as Su Qingsang grew up, she looked more and more like him. Many times, when he looked at his two daughters, he could only sigh that this was really fate. Chapter 365. In the end, Su Qinghui's worries became less and less as time went by. In the past few years, they had completely disappeared without a trace. He enjoyed the result and the fact that Li Qianxue was kept in the dark and ignorant. He was waiting. He wanted to live longer than Li Qianxue. One day, when Li Qianxue was dying and about to leave this world, he would tell her that the daughter she had doted on for decades was actually born from the woman she hated the most. He would tell her that everything of the Li family finally fell on a child who was not Li Qianxue. He imagined the expression Li Qianxue might have, the reaction she might have, and the feeling of Li Qianxue dying with her eyes open. He felt that only then would he have a sense of accomplishment and revenge. However, Su Qinghui didn't expect that there would be such a big change in his revenge plan. First, Su Qingsang married Hua Jinyao so that she, who could only live an ordinary life for the rest of her life, had a new opportunity. Second, Su Qingsang would meet Xiang Kaiping, and Xiang Kaiping would think that Su Qingsang was her daughter. Both of these things were beyond Su Qinghui's expectations. This was not what he wanted. It was not something he could have guessed. He had wanted to let it go. It didn't matter if it was a misunderstanding. Xiang Kaiping had nothing and Su Qingsang was already with Hua Jinyao. Her appearance couldn't change anything. However, Su Qinghui didn't expect that Xiang Kaiping would hate Su Peijin. She even went against Su Peijin for Su Qingsang. This was definitely not what Su Qinghui wanted to see. He owed Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijin was his daughter in the palm of his hand. How could he watch Xiang Kaiping make things difficult for her own daughter? Not to mention that if Li Qianxue came looking for Xiang Kaiping, he was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would hate Su Peijian even more. That was even more not what he wanted to see. He was obsessed and felt that Su Peijian was willing to give the best. No matter what, Li Qianxue should be good to Su Peijian. Xiang Kaiping should also be good to Su Peijian. That was the reason why he came looking for her in a hurry today. Others didn't know, but he knew very well that Su Qingsang was actually Li Qianshue's child. Su Peijian was Xiang Caiping's daughter. Xiang Kaiping had slapped Su Peijian because of Su Qingsang. What would Xiang Kaiping think if she found out? Su Qinghui didn't know and he didn't dare to think about it now. Things had gone out of control and he wanted to tell Xiang Kaiping the truth. He was also worried that Xiang Kaiping would not believe or accept it. Perhaps he could try to persuade Xiang Kaiping to stay away from Su Peijian and avoid conflict with her? Su Qinghui thought for a long time and finally came up with an excuse. However, he didn't expect to see a happy family in front of him the moment he arrived. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping were like a real mother and daughter. The atmosphere between them was very harmonious. That was something Su Qinghui hadn't expected. He had been wondering if he should say something. Should I expose him? If he didn't say anything, Xiang Kaiping would always hate Peijian and get close to Qingsang, which was something he didn't want. However, if he really exposed the truth, would the harmony between Xiang Kaiping and Su Qingsang still exist? Most importantly, Xiang Kaiping wanted to be her daughter. If she knew that Su Qingsang wasn't her daughter, would she turn around and look for Su Peijian? Chapter 366. He had no way to punish Li Qianxue, nor could he avenge the humiliation he had suffered years ago. Su Qinghui had been in a dilemma. Xiang Kaiping wanted to kick him out, but he still hadn't figured out what to say. When her hand touched the door and she was about to push him out, Su Qinghui lost his cool and blurted out the words, "Su Qingsang is not his daughter." Xiang Kaiping stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "What did you say?" "I said Su Qingsang isn't your daughter. You don't have to be so nice to her. You even hurt Peijian for her sake. You know Peijian is your real daughter." Before Su Qinghui could finish his sentence, Xiang Kaiping interrupted him. "Su Qinghui." Xiang Kaiping hadn't expected that after more than 20 years, the gentleman in her memory would become like this. "You don't even want to acknowledge your daughter so that I won't cause trouble for Su Peijian?" "Kaiping, what are you talking about? Why didn't I acknowledge my daughter?" "You still deny it? Tell me, is Qingsang your daughter?" "Yes." "Really? How do you know she is?" Xiang Kaiping had never been so sharp. Her body was trembling and her voice was almost cracking. The man she had loved, the only man she had ever loved. It wasn't just love. They had grown up together, almost like siblings. However, this man was such a man. In order to prevent her from hurting his precious daughter, in order to prevent his daughter from making things difficult for his legal wife's daughter, he could even find such a shameless reason? "Get out." Xiang Kaiping was furious. She opened the door and was about to push Su Qinghui out. "Kaiping, did you hear that Qingsang?" Before Su Qinghui could finish his sentence, he saw Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao coming out of the elevator. He froze for a moment. The words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't say them out. Xiang Kaiping was about to lose her temper when she saw Su Qingsang come back. She lowered her eyes and didn't want to say a word. "Mom?" What was going on? Why did she hear Su Qinghui mention her name? Su Qingsang looked back and forth between Su Qinghui and Xiang Kaiping. She blinked and turned to look at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao shook his head at her without saying a word. However, his hand secretly squeezed her palm. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh, although it was not the right time. Looking at her parents, she cleared her throat. "Mom, it's cold outside. Let's go in." The weather in Lin City was getting colder. Now that it was New Year's Day, it was indeed very cold to stay outside. "Are you cold? Come in." Xiang Kaiping was anxious. She ignored Su Qinghui and walked past him to grab Su Qingsang's hand. Su Qingsang's hand was held by Xiang Kaiping. Contrary to Su Qingsang's cold hand, Xiang Caiping's hand was very warm. "Are you cold? Why don't you wear more clothes when you go out?" "It's my fault." Hua Jinyao followed her into the room. "I should have gotten Qingsang some clothes." "Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I said I was afraid that you would be cold." Su Qingsang pointed at herself. "Look, I'm wearing so many clothes. And you said your hands are so cold." "My hands are like this. When it's cold, my hands and feet get cold. It has nothing to do with how many clothes I wear." "That won't do. We'll find a traditional Chinese medicine doctor to take your pulse. We'll see how you can recuperate." Mom, I'm a doctor myself. Doctors don't treat themselves. Haven't you heard of it? Xiang Caiping's love for her daughter increased. Chapter 367. Mom? Su Qingsang looked at the two of them with a confused look on her face. What was going on? The atmosphere was quite good when they were eating just now. Qingsang, it's getting late. You should rest early. Take a hot shower and soak your hands and feet in hot water. Xiang Caiping didn't respond to Su Qingsang's look. She just held her hand and smiled gently. In addition to the gentleness, there was also self-blame, guilt, and heartache. Those emotions were well concealed by Xiang Caiping. All that could be seen was her gentleness and love at the moment. Mom? Su Qingsang was a little helpless and touched. I'm not a child anymore. Yes, you're not a child anymore. You still don't know how to take care of yourself. How could Su Qingsang know how to take care of herself? Without a biological mother by her side, having a biological father was as good as not having one. She didn't know how much she had been wronged since she was a child. Thinking of this, Xiang Caiping was once again glad that she had come to Lin City. If she hadn't come, Su Qingsang would have suffered even more. Mom, don't worry. I'll take good care of Qingsang in the future. Hua Jinyao took the opportunity to show his sincerity. He stood next to Su Qingsang and put his big hand on her shoulder. Qingsang, don't you think so? His parents were still around and he wasn't being proper again. Su Qingsang glared at him and moved her shoulder to the side without a trace. Hua Jinyao was very strong. How could Su Qingsang avoid him? He could tell that Su Qinghui was probably up to no good this time. Otherwise Xiang Caiping wouldn't look like that. He didn't know what Su Qinghui said to upset her. Maybe he could go back and check? Hua Jinyao's gaze fell on Su Qinghui, who had a somewhat complicated expression. Once again, a very strange feeling emerged in his heart. Xiang Caiping looked at the loving and harmonious couple and was happier than if she had eaten honey. You guys go and rest. I'll watch some TV. She was going to talk to Su Qinghui alone. Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang looked at each other and turned to say goodbye to Su Qinghui together before returning to the room. All of Su Qinghui's impulses just now disappeared when he saw Su Qingsang come back. A little impatience would spoil great plans. He couldn't say. Since her children were no longer around, Xiang Caiping didn't want to pretend anymore. Su Qinghui, why don't you tell me that Qingsang is not my daughter? Whose daughter was that? Who is my daughter? Su Qinghui looked at the sharp expression on Xiang Caiping's face. She was a gentle woman who used to have no opinions of her own. Because she had become a mother, she had also started to become sharper. She would show such a sharp side to him. Can't say it? Xiang Caiping smiled coldly and nodded. Say it. You don't want me to make things difficult for Su Peixian, right? Yes. Su Qinghui closed his eyes. His heart was filled with bitterness, but his face was calm. Caiping, Peixian is a good girl. Next time, can you not make things difficult for her? If there was such a thing as the pain of having one's heart gouged out and the agony of having one's heart dug out, Xiang Caiping felt that it would be the same as now. Su Qinghui, Peixian is a good girl. Wasn't Qingsang the same? I can't make things difficult for Su Peixian, but your wife and daughter can make things difficult for my Qingsang, right? Su Qinghui opened his eyes and looked at her helplessly. I didn't mean that. Chapter 368. Su Qinghui clenched his fists tightly by his side. He looked at Xiang Caiping and finally nodded. Okay, I'll go. He was free and easy, but his footsteps were very heavy when he turned around. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Su Qinghui had never doubted himself like this before. He had never denied himself like this before. His shoulders were full of helplessness. Xiang Caiping saw it, but she didn't feel the slightest sympathy. Xiang Caiping was even more determined than Su Qinghui. No one can bully my daughter. She would protect Su Qingsang well. She wouldn't let Su Qinghui or the Li family hurt her again. It was her fault in the past. It was her mistake that caused the current situation. From now on she would protect Su Qingsang well. Su Qingsang entered the door and touched her nose. She wanted to eavesdrop on what her parents would say, but she didn't feel like it. She couldn't help but stick her ear to the door the moment the door was closed. Hua Jinyao smiled and was about to open the door a little. Su Qingsang suddenly became nervous. Don't. It would be bad if they found out. If you want to hear it, just do it openly. In fact, he was a little curious about what Su Qinghui and Xiang Caiping had to say. Shoo. Su Qingsang made a gesture and pressed her ear to the door. Hua Jinyao wanted to laugh, so he imitated her and pressed his ear to listen. However, the sound insulation of the door was too good. He couldn't hear what was said outside, but he saw Su Qingsang's beautiful neck and small earlobes. Along the back of her collar, he could see the smooth snow-white nape. That color made Hu Jinyao's eyes dim. He couldn't care less about eavesdropping on the conversation between his parents-in-law. He picked up Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang's body was suddenly suspended in the air, and she was startled. Hu Jinyao. What was he doing? She hadn't finished listening. Although she didn't hear anything at all. Wife. Hu Jinyao carried her to the bedside in a few steps. You went to Japan for a week, right? Oh. Su Qingsang almost understood what he was going to do next. Only 6 days. Yes. That's a week. Hu Jinyao laid her body flat on the bed and lay down himself. Honey, we haven't had an in-depth conversation for a week. Su Qingsang looked into his eyes and suddenly felt hot. Me what? Hu Jinyao kissed the tip of her nose as he spoke. Don't you know that communication is essential for a good relationship between a husband and wife? Especially deep communication. Now, let's exchange some pointers. Hu Jinyao. Call me husband. Hu Jinyao. Call me husband. Hubby. I'm here. Honey, I'm here. Say it again, hubby. The following conversation was indeed very in-depth. Su Qingsang was still a little tired when she got up in the morning. It was true that absence made the heart grow fonder, but it was also true that her physical strength could not keep up. Hu Jinyao got up early, but it was raining today so he couldn't go outside to do morning exercises. He saw Su Qingsang as soon as she woke up. He pecked her on the cheek. Morning. Early? It was getting late. Su Qingsang just wanted to get up, but her waist softened and she lay back down. Hu Jinyao looked at her and wanted to laugh, but he didn't dare to really laugh. This wife was good at everything, but she was thin-skinned and had poor physical strength. Chapter 369. Su Qingsang pushed his hand away. How could she be fine? Stay away from me. I'll be fine. That won't do. When he met her coquettish eyes, he smiled, revealing his white teeth. Su Qingsang gritted her teeth. What are you laughing at? White teeth. Honey, I like to be near you. Hu Jinyao didn't forget to take advantage of her as he spoke. He wrapped his arms around her waist and said, Don't you know? Move, I want to get up. She still had to work today. He had rested for so long. When Su Qingsang got off the bed, she suddenly paused and said, By the way, I'll tell the director today. What? In fact, I mentioned it to the director before. I said that you wanted me to go to Rong City to develop my career. The director did not agree at the time. I'll talk to her again today and see what the director thinks. If it's possible, let's go to Rong City. He stood up and walked to Su Qingsang. Do you want to go to Rong City with me, or do you want to avoid your father and your mother? Both. Although Su Qingsang was interrupted by Hu Jinyao yesterday, she didn't miss the sharp look on Xiang Caiping's face. You saw how my mother was. She couldn't communicate with my dad at all, let alone get along with him calmly. Although it was impossible for the two of them to be together now, if my dad kept pestering me like this, my mom would definitely feel very troubled. Since that's the case, why don't we separate them? At that time, they won't be able to see each other anymore, and I believe my mother's emotions will stabilize. Hu Jinyao nodded and said, Then you should ask your director. I'll talk to Cheng Xianyun and see which hospital you want to go to. There's no rush. We can talk about it when I get to Rong City. But I think we might have to take care of things in Lin City. All right. Whatever you say. Su Qingsang glanced at Hu Jinyao. She finally realized that he was almost unconditionally obedient to her when it came to these small matters. Looking at Hu Jinyao's handsome face, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Hu Jinyao, thank you. Hu Jinyao held her waist and kissed her lips again when she moved away. And deepened the kiss. It wasn't until Su Qingsang's legs turned to jelly and she leaned into his arms that he finally let her go. This is the gift I want. Su Qingsang glared at him and quickly hid in the bathroom. The two of them walked out of the room hand in hand. Xiang Caiping had already prepared breakfast. Recently, she was getting more and more familiar with this kind of thing. Morning, Mom. Morning, Mom. Good morning. Xiang Caiping's gaze fell on their hands, which were held together. The more she looked at this pair of children, the more satisfied she was. Qingsang, how was your rest yesterday? Do you want to take another day off? No need. Su Qingsang picked up the bowl of porridge in front of her. I'm not that weak. Besides, I've already taken a few days off. Your health is more important. Xiang Caiping was worried about her daughter. No matter what, if you're really tired, stay at home and rest. Anyway, even if Qingsang didn't work, The money she had earned in the past was enough for her to use for the rest of her life. Mom, you'll spoil me rotten. My daughter. I want to spoil her. After yesterday, Xiang Kaiping had thought it through. Su Qinghui, if you like to spoil your own daughter, then go ahead. If you want to be good to your own daughter, then go ahead. Chapter 370. Hua Jinyao supported himself with one hand as he watched the interaction between the mother and daughter. The strange thought he had yesterday completely disappeared. He felt that this result was pretty good. Be it Su Qinghui or Li Qianxue. With him around, those people wouldn't be able to do anything. He sincerely hoped that the happy scene between the mother and daughter could continue. After Su Qingsang and Su Qingsang left, Xiang Kaiping cleared the dishes and cleaned the house. Sister Lu used to be the one who did all these things, but she couldn't stay idle and liked to do it herself. After cleaning, she knitted a sweater for a while. Her movements weren't slow, and the lower half of her body could be seen through the sweater. As she knitted, she thought about what to cook for her daughter and son-in-law today. Qingsang was a doctor. She worked very hard every day. In the evening, Hua Jinyao went to bed again. It wasn't that she was eavesdropping. She was a little upset after being provoked by Su Qinghui yesterday, but she was afraid that her daughter would overthink it. He thought he was going to talk to Su Qingsang, but he overheard it. Xiang Kaiping suddenly felt uncomfortable and walked back to her room without stopping. However, he was worried that Su Qingsang's body wouldn't be able to take it. The more she thought about it, the more restless she became. She put down her sweater, picked up her bag and went out. As soon as she stepped into the elevator, another elevator opened. Li Qianxue walked out from inside. His expression did not look too good. Her daughter, Su Peixian, was her flesh and blood. She and Su Qinghui's married life could be said to be as respectful as ice. After Su Peixian was born, Su Qinghui loved his daughter dearly even though he didn't like her. Not only him but old Master Li, and she also cherished this daughter of theirs. But now her daughter had been slapped in the face. The one who hit her was one of the people she hated the most. No, perhaps he was the only one. Li Qianxue thought of Xiang Kaiping from many years ago. She was delicate and pale, just like Sister Lin. She didn't like this kind of woman. She liked Su Qinghui and fell in love with him. In the end, Li Qianxue closed her eyes and gestured for her assistant to knock on the door. The assistant knocked on the door, but there was no response. Li Qianxue furrowed her brows tightly. She had never been to this place before. She knew that Su Qinghui had given her this house when Su Qingsang was 18 years old. She didn't care about the small amount of money needed to buy a house. But now, the house that Su Qinghui had bought had been given to Su Qingsang, and now that woman was living in it. What was this? Keeping a mistress in his house? Jim Li, there's no one. Li Qianxue looked at the tightly shut door with an unfriendly expression. She thought for a moment and said, "Let's go." Did Xiang Kaiping know that he was coming? Is that why he went into hiding? Xiang Kaiping could hide, but Su Qingsang couldn't. Su Peixian entered Su Qinghui's office early in the morning. Su Qinghui didn't come home yesterday. She couldn't find him in the morning. Dad. When Su Peixian saw Su Qinghui, she rushed up to him without hesitation. Why didn't you go home yesterday? Old Master Li had asked Su Qinghui what he had been up to this morning. Li Qianxue's expression was a little ugly at the time, but she still said that there was a project in the company, and Su Qinghui had been very busy recently. Did you go to see Su Qingsang yesterday? Did you see her mother? Did you stand up for me? The series of questions gave Su Qinghui a headache. He didn't go home yesterday but rested in the office lounge for the night. Chapter 371. Even when he was asleep, he kept dreaming. In the dream, he regretted that he should not have swapped the two children in the first place. Then he dreamed that many years later, Xiang Kaiping found out that he had swapped the children. Not only was she unhappy, but she also blamed him. Finally, he dreamed of Li Qianxue. The moment she found out that he had swapped her daughter, she almost went crazy. Then he woke up from the nightmare of Li Qianxue stabbing him with a knife. After waking up, the overly realistic dream made him have no doubt that one day he would really encounter that kind of thing, that he would really go to that day. Dad. Seeing that Su Qinghui was distracted again, Su Peixian was very displeased. Say something. Did you go to the mother and daughter to get even with them? Peixian. Don't be stubborn. With that dream, Su Qinghui had decided that he must not let anyone know that the two children had been swapped. Right now, he wanted Su Peixian to stop causing trouble for Su Qingsang. Our company has been working with Hua Jinyao recently. It's better for you not to cause trouble for Su Qingsang. Dad. Su Peixian couldn't believe what she heard. What do you mean? Are you saying that in your heart, the company's business is more important than me? That's not what I mean. Su Qinghui rubbed between his eyebrows. He spoiled this daughter too much. Unknowingly he spoiled her a little too much. Looking at her and then at Su Qingsang, he couldn't imagine how Xiang Kaiping would react when she found out about the truth. Patient. Su Qinghui's voice had a rare trace of fatigue. In my heart, you are the most important. Whether it is the company or Su Qingsang, they can't compare to you. I don't want you to go to Su Qingsang because I don't think it is necessary. Secondly, Su Qingsang is now under Hua Jinyao's protection. If we go against the Hua family, we will not be able to gain any advantage. Are we just going to let it go? Su Peixian couldn't take it. Of course not. Su Qinghui got up and walked to Su Peixian. He held her shoulders and said, Peixian, believe me. In this world, it is not about who gets the advantage first who wins. The one who laughs last will be the winner. Su Peixian saw the seriousness in her father's eyes and suddenly nodded. Dad, do you mean that you've already thought of a way to deal with Su Qingsang and her mother? Of course. Su Qinghui skipped over the words mother and daughter, and finally stopped regretting his choice. Peixian believes in Dad. You are the one who wins in the end. Okay. Su Peixian was relieved to hear that. I believe you, Dad. Since Su Qinghui had said so, she would wait and see Su Qingsang suffer. As soon as Su Qingsang entered the department, she gave out the gifts for the director and the doctors. In the past few months of her marriage, she would go to Rome City one day and Japan the next. The number of times he took leave was more than the previous few years. In fact, he was quite embarrassed. Fortunately, Zhang Qiubai was a very good person. Qin Xiaoyu was also a very good person. The two chief physicians were nice people, and so were the other doctors and nurses in the department. Su Qingsang got busy after the gift was sent out. At the end of the year, there were more people getting married and giving birth. Su Qingsang, who had rested for a few days, immediately threw herself into work and was very busy. During the time she was in Japan, the obstetrics and gynecology department received several pregnant women who were about to give birth. 2 of them had other diseases that required special attention. Chapter 372. It was already late winter in Lin City, and the temperature was slightly low. There were either patients or doctors and nurses hurrying past the corridor. Compared to them, Li Qinxue was the most eye-catching one. Li Qinxue was wearing a white woolen coat, her long hair was tied up behind her head, her makeup was exquisite, and her facial features were bright. She looked to be in her early 30s. Even if she walked quickly, her steps were very elegant. In the past, Li Qinxue was the model lady of the entire upper class of Lin City. Because no matter when he saw her, no matter where he saw her, she always had an elegant look on her face. However, at this time her expression was not very good. No, it should be said that she did not want to be good. While Su Qingsang was thinking about whether she could avoid it, Li Qinxue had already seen her. Not only did she see her, but she also walked straight toward her. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. If it was a blessing, it would not be a curse. If it was a curse, she could not avoid it. Li Qinxue was self-conscious, and it was unlikely that she would cause trouble here. Su Qingsang thought for a moment and took a few steps forward to greet her. Auntie? Are you here for me? Li Qinxue stood still and glanced at Su Qingsang. She was wearing a white coat and had a face that looked very similar to Su Qinghui's when he was young. She felt uncomfortable when she saw this face. It was quite uncomfortable. Her daughter did not look like Su Qinghui, nor did she look like herself. However, Xiang Caiping's daughter looked very much like Su Qinghui. Li Qinshue's hand that was holding the bag slightly tightened, and her expression was a little ugly. Auntie? After all, Su Qingsang had lived in the Li family for so many years, so she naturally knew that Li Qinxue did not like her. Come in and talk. Her office was just above and she didn't have her own office. She was with other doctors. However, they should not be in the office at this time. Bringing Li Qinxue back to her office, Su Qingsang looked at the environment in front of her. Sit down. Su Qingsang watched Li Qinxue enter the door, but let the assistant guard the door. She sighed in her heart. Auntie, do you want some water? After asking, she felt a little silly. Li Qinxue did not come to drink water today. No, I'm not here to drink water. Li Qinshue's face was cold, and her tone was also cold. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She seemed to have just remembered that Li Qinxue never drank pure water from outside. What can I do for you, Auntie? Su Qingsang didn't dare to joke with Li Qinxue. That was courting death. Li Qinxue pursed her lips even tighter when she saw Su Qingsang's uncomfortable expression. To be honest, she really didn't like Su Qingsang. However, no matter how much she disliked her, she would not go so far as to make things difficult for her. After all, she did not want to involve the next generation in the matters of the previous generation. However, the older Su Qingsang got, the more she looked like Su Qinghui, which made her hate her even more. Thinking of this, Li Qianshua's expression became more and more unpleasant. I heard that you went to Japan some time ago? The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth twitched. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded slightly, her voice strangely lacking in confidence. You went with your mother? Li Qianxue took a step forward. Yes. Su Qingsang wasn't afraid of Li Qianxue. But maybe it was because the past few years had left a deep impression on her that she was a little afraid of her. You met Peixian in Japan? Li Qianxue took another step forward. Yes. Su Peixian must have told Li Qianxue about being beaten. Chapter 373. Su Qingsang actually felt a little emotional. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue stood up for Su Peixian when she was beaten up. Su Qingsang had never experienced the feeling of being loved by her parents before. Now that she had experienced it, she felt that Su Peixian was really lucky. Your mother hit Peixian? Li Qianxue continued to take a step forward. She was already standing in front of Su Qingsang. The distance between the two of them was less than 20 centimeters. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable and took a step back. Your mother hit Peixian? When Li Qianxue said this, her gaze was already quite sharp. Auntie, you can't blame my mother for this. The situation at that time? I'm asking you, am I right? Li Qianxue wasn't here to listen to an explanation today. She just wanted an answer. Did your mother make a move? Su Qingsang couldn't refute that. She nodded and said, yes. Li Qianshue's face darkened. She raised her hand and slapped Su Qingsang's face. Su Qingsang didn't expect Li Qianxue, who had always been arrogant, to hit her. She didn't want to be hit. Just as her hand was about to fall, he stretched out his hand to block it without thinking. Li Qianxue didn't expect Su Qingsang to dare to block it. The anger on her face grew. Su Qingsang, Auntie. Su Qingsang was a little scared. Like Hua Jinyao, Li Qianxue had been in a high position for a long time, so she had an imposing manner. Moreover, she was already a little afraid of her. He wasn't confident that he would be able to stop her hand from hitting him. Auntie, as the saying goes, a mother's debts must be paid by her daughter. I can't stop you from hitting me today to avenge Su Peixian. But if you hit me today and I go to work with a palm print, I'm afraid it won't be good. What does it have to do with me? Li Qianxue tried to pull her hand out, but Su Qingsang held her back tightly. Li Qianxue lived like a princess. When she went out, she didn't have to carry heavy things. She even had someone carry her bag for her. However, Su Qingsang was a doctor. When she was short of hands, she had to lift the bed, help to send the patients, and perform consecutive operations. How could Li Qianxue defeat her? Su Qingsang, let go of me. Li Qianxue was determined to teach Su Qingsang a lesson today. If her mother dared to lay a hand on Su Peixian, then don't blame her for doing the same to Su Qingsang. Auntie, if I let go, would I let you hit me? Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. Auntie, please be reasonable. Your mother is the one who did it? You want me to reason with you? Li Qianxue sneered. Su Qingsang, how shameless do you think you are? Auntie. Su Qingsang took a deep breath and retorted, I'm not shameless enough. He didn't think much of it. In fact, I can understand why you want to beat me up for Su Peixian. However, Hua Jinyao was very protective. If you slap me today, I don't care. I'll take it. But I can't guarantee that he will do anything. Are you threatening me? It was rare for Li Qianxue to be angered by her. Her tone lost its usual calmness. It doesn't count. I'm just telling you that it won't do you any good. Su Qingsang saw that Li Qianxue was angry. She let go of her hand, took a step back, and stood further away from Li Qianxue. Auntie, Su Peixian only said that my mother hit her. I don't think she said anything nasty, right? Li Qianshue's face was cold. Her hand was hurting from Su Qingsang's grip just now. She moved her wrist and felt that she couldn't take it anymore. Su Peixian scolded me and it was very nasty. At that time, my mother was also anxious to stand up for me, so she hit me. Just like you did today. My mother hit Su Peixian and you rushed over to stand up for her. What if you hit me? If I was hit by you, would my mother be anxious to find trouble with Su Peixian again and stand up for me? You? Li Qianshue's face became more and more ugly. Auntie, both sides are responsible for this matter. Why don't we each take a step back? You don't care about my mother hitting Su Peixian. I will also hide this matter from my mother. What do you think? What right do you have to negotiate with me? I really don't have the right to negotiate with you. Su Qingsang nodded, and her voice was much softer than before. I just want to tell you a fact. What you do is not good for you. If you vent your anger on me, my mother will look for you or Su Peixian. You can indeed not be afraid. But in this way, it will increase the chances of my mother appearing in front of my father. I don't think this is what you want to see, right? Li Qianxue was stunned for a moment. She thought of Xiang Caiping's delicate face when she was young, but it always made Su Qinghui feel pity for her. The anger in her heart turned into hatred. Of course, she didn't want to see Su Qinghui looking for Xiang Caiping again and again. She had been unable to compete with that woman for so many years. Even when Su Qinghui was in front of her, his heart was still thinking about that woman. Now that that woman was back, Su Qinghui's soul would probably be taken away by Xiang Caiping. Thinking of this, she became more and more angry and hateful. Looking at Su Qingsang's face, she felt that she was getting more and more annoyed. Su Qingsang naturally noticed the change in her expression. She knew that something was wrong, but she could only think of a way to continue comforting her. Auntie. In fact, I don't have a grudge against you, and neither does my mother. It wasn't my mother who brought me back to the Su family but my father. If you want to hate me, you should look for my father, not my mother. Seeing that Li Qianshua's expression didn't change, Su Qingsang continued, Auntie, what do you think about this? You can forget about this matter and never mention it again. I promise. I will make sure that my mother will never appear in front of my father again. What can you guarantee? It wasn't that Li Qianxue didn't believe Su Qingsang, but she didn't believe Su Qinghui. If he knew that that woman was back, she was afraid that he wouldn't be able to sit still. Don't think that she didn't know where Su Qinghui went yesterday. Didn't he go to look for Xiang Caiping? He didn't come back for a whole night. Who knew what he did outside? Did he do anything wrong? And that Xiang Caiping hadn't seen Su Qinghui for so long. Now that she saw him again, wasn't it dry wood or fire? Every time Li Qianxue thought of this, she felt that her gums began to hurt. What can you guarantee? What right do you have to guarantee? Su Qingsang sighed. It was a decision that she had made before, but at this moment, it only strengthened her determination. Auntie, you should know that Hu Jingyao is from Rong City. In fact, my mother has been living in Rong City before. In fact, Hu Jingyao has asked me more than once to go to Rong City with him to develop my career, but I was not very willing at that time. Chapter 374. Su Qingsang's tone was quite sincere. She repeatedly promised that she and Xiang Caiping would stay away from Lin City. Li Qianxue looked at her expression and knew that she was telling the truth. She stood there without moving and stared at Su Qingsang with her sharp almond-shaped eyes. What she said made some sense, but only to a certain extent. You said that you weren't willing before. Why are you willing now? Do you think that I will believe you after you say that? How do I know that if I let you go now, you won't turn around and find Hu Jingyao or your father to help you? Auntie, if I want to find them, I can find them now. If I don't want to go to Rong City, I can tell you now. You can find out the truth later. After all, you can find out where I am and whether I am in Lin City or not. Isn't that right? Li Qianxue was silent. In fact, she really didn't like Su Qingsang. Her existence was like a thorn, reminding her how Su Qinghui became her husband. It constantly reminded her that her man didn't love her, but other women. Closing her eyes, Li Qianxue felt her heart palpitate and her face was a little pale. She was less than 50 years old, but she already liked to reminisce about the past. In her dreams at night, she asked herself over and over again whether she would make the same choice if she could start over again. Unfortunately, there was no answer because time could never be repeated. She didn't speak and Su Qingsang didn't know what she meant. Was she going to let it go like this? In fact, if Li Qianxue really wanted to hit her today, she wouldn't be surprised. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang. She hated Su Qingsang as much as she loved Su Qinghui. But no matter how much she hated Su Qingsang, she had to admit. For more than 20 years they had neglected her, but they didn't let her go astray. Not only did she not go astray. Professional aside, Li Qianxue was even willing to admit that Su Qingsang was excellent. Although in her heart, there was still a gap between such excellence and her own daughter. After all, Su Peixian had been in the company for a long time and helped her deal with business. There was some silence in the office. Su Qingsang looked at the time. She seemed to have a meeting in the department. Junior sister? There was a knock on the door. Zhuo Hongchen's voice came from outside. Su Qingsang paused for a moment and smiled at Li Qianxue. Annie, I'll open the door. Li Qianxue stood still and Su Qingsang ran to open the door. Outside the door, Li Qianshue's assistant still wanted to stop Zhuo Hongchen. It was also because there was an assistant standing there that Zhuo Hongqin, who was originally just passing by, was allowed to come in to take a look. Junior Marshal's sister. Are you okay? Zhuo Hongqin looked at the assistant, then at Li Qianxue. He felt that Li Qianxue looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who she was. Your Mr. Zhuo's son? Li Qianxue recognized Zhuo Hongqin immediately. Mr. Zhuo and old Master Li were close friends and they got along well. When they were free they would go fishing or play chess together. Yes. Zhuo Hongqin recognized Li Qianxue. So it's Auntie Li. Hello Auntie Li. I didn't expect you to be so big already. Li Qianxue looked at him and then at Su Qingsang. Zhuo Hongqin called Su Qingsang Junior Marshal's sister? Zhuo Hongqin recognized Li Qianxue and knew who she was. He then looked at Su Qingsang. Even if he was worried that she would be taken advantage of, he couldn't say it out loud. Junior Marshal's sister? Didn't you say you had something for me? Something? Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment, then suddenly nodded. Yes. Wait a moment. Su Qingsang bought a lot of gifts when she went to Japan. Other than for the people in the department, she also gave a gift to Zhuo Hongqin. She turned to her desk, opened the drawer, and took out a beautifully wrapped box. Senior Marshal brother here. I went to Japan a few days ago and this is a small gift. I hope you don't mind. Why would I mind if it's a gift from you? Zhuo Hongqin took the box from her hand. Even though he knew that Su Qingsang only treated him as a classmate, he was still happy and excited. Thank you. You're too kind. Su Qingsang smiled. Did you come here to get a bracelet? Of course not. Zhuo Hongqin thought about the notice from the hospital. I have something else to tell you. What is it? As you know, we have a collaboration with Song City Central Hospital. They will be conducting some medical research during this period, including topics that you are interested in. I have already recommended you to the hospital. You can go to Song City as an exchange doctor. Really? Su Qingsang was suddenly excited. When will you be going? How long will you be gone? About half a month. Zhuo Hongqin glanced at Su Qingsang as he spoke. Don't rush to decide. After all, you have to know that it will be almost the new year when you come back. Su Qingsang was stunned. She suddenly remembered that she was married. She should have told Hu Jinyao first before going to Song City. Okay, I got it. Think about it. If there are no problems, submit your name tomorrow. Ultimately, it depends on your own will. Okay, thank you. Senior Marshal brother. You don't have to be so polite with me. Zhuo Hongqin raised the box in his hand as he spoke. Speaking of which, I should thank you. After he finished speaking, he looked at Li Qianxue who was still standing at the side. Auntie Li still has something to tell you, right? Then I'll leave first. Emicha. Su Qingsang nodded, but she was secretly relieved. She had observed Li Qianxue for the past few years and found that she cared about her reputation. She probably wouldn't act like she had just now. Zhuo Hongqin left and the assistant closed the door again. Now it was just the two of them again. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. When she met Li Qianxue's sharp gaze, she really felt that she couldn't stand it anymore. Auntie, don't you have to work today? Li Qianxue glanced at Su Qingsang coldly, feeling inexplicably annoyed and disgusted. Don't you still have your father in the company? Don't worry, it's just one day away. The Li Corporation won't collapse. Su Qingsang couldn't respond to this, but she knew that Li Qianxue was obviously still angry. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart and spoke again. Auntie, I promise that I will bring my mother back to Rong City with Hu Jinyao as soon as possible. Back to Rong City? Li Qianxue snorted coldly. Your senior marshal brother just said that he wants you to go on an exchange program. What? You don't want such an opportunity? Su Qingsang was speechless for a moment. She suddenly found that she didn't know how to respond to Li Qianxue's provocation. She wasn't that afraid of Su Qinghui, but she was afraid of Li Qianxue. She was always a little afraid of her. Chapter 375. Even so, Su Qingsang still tried to persuade her. You heard it. It would only take half a month. It just so happens that it's time for the new year. We'll leave at that time. Li Qianxue had already planned to leave. She was indeed a little impulsive today. In fact, she shouldn't have come here to find Su Qingsang at all. She shouldn't have come here to do such a disgraceful thing. But now, looking at Su Qingsang's expression, she felt inexplicably annoyed. Look, you said that you would leave immediately, but now you want to wait for another half a month? Does that mean that after half a month you can say that you will stay here for the new year? Auntie, I didn't mean that. Then what do you mean? Half a month is enough for your father and your mother to rekindle their old love, right? When Li Qianxue said the words rekindled old love, her voice was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. Su Qingsang trembled at the way she gritted her teeth. Without thinking she said, "Auntie, you think too much. It's impossible for my mom and dad to be together now." Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She didn't believe Su Qingsang at all. Su Qingsang sighed in her heart. She found that she had sighed more often today than she had in the past year. "Auntie, I know you don't believe me and it's hard for you to believe me. I also know that you don't like my mom. It's hard to believe that my mom came back with no ulterior motives. But I still have to tell you that it's really impossible for my dad and mom to be together. You're not your mother. How can you make a promise for your mother?" Li Qianxue couldn't help but want to refute her. "It's true that I'm not my mother, but I can vouch for her. Because my mother is not only my father's past, she is also a mother." Su Qingsang had been watching from the sidelines for the past few days and had seen through Xiang Caiping's thoughts. "No matter how much my mother loves my father, she will never be with him again. Because she recognizes me now, she is still my mother. All these years she had been alone in Rong City, and she had always thought that I was living a good life. Until she acknowledged me. Until she found out that I was an illegitimate daughter. Until she found out that my father had ignored me for so many years. Auntie, I'm not blaming anyone or blaming anyone. In fact, it's my mom who loves me. She doesn't want to be with my dad anymore. She blames my father. She hates him more than enough. How could she be willing to go back with my dad? She can't even forgive my dad. You didn't even want to talk to him." "Auntie. Actually, I don't need to lie to you about these things. I want to tell you that some things really aren't what you think they are. Anyway, believe it or not, it's impossible for my mom and dad to be together." Li Qianxue listened to her without saying a word. Finally she sneered. "Are you saying that you blame my family for not taking good care of you? Is that why your mother hates us?" No wonder he tried to make things difficult for Su Peixian. "Auntie." Su Qingsang felt a little helpless. Her main point wasn't this at all. "I just said I'm not blaming anyone. In fact, I don't blame anyone. If he wanted to blame something, he could only blame fate. If he wanted to blame something, he could only blame heaven's will. Now that she had grown up, she would not pursue the past. What's more, the wife and mistress were incompatible. She didn't want to get involved in the grudges of her previous life. It's good that there are no monsters. I don't think you have the right to blame me. There were many families with illegitimate daughters in Lin City, but which family would bring an illegitimate daughter into their own family to raise? How many people had secretly laughed at her because of this? How many grievances had she suffered because of Su Qinghui? Because of Xiang Caiping, she had been ignored by Su Qinghui her whole life. Under such circumstances, she would be magnanimous if she didn't make things difficult for Su Qingsang. Not to mention that he had to get along well with her and treat her well. That was impossible. Hearing the arrogance in her voice, Su Qingsang nodded and said, "Yes. Yes, Auntie. I said it. I don't blame you. But please believe me. My mother neglected me in the past and didn't take good care of me. In the future she will definitely take good care of me. So wherever I go she will definitely go with me. As for me, Hu Jingyao is from Rong City. You don't have to worry about me not leaving." She spoke sincerely and every word she said was reasonable. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang for a long time. She didn't want to stay any longer, but she still said coldly, "I'm not worried. I just hope that you will do what you say." In fact, she didn't want Su Qingsang to stay in Lin City and wander around under her nose. Now that she was willing to leave, she couldn't ask for more. Su Qingsang felt a little helpless because of her tone. Why didn't she see it before? Li Qianxue's coldness was so superficial. "Then Auntie, I have to go to a meeting. You see." Li Qianxue glared at her. Was she chasing her away? If it weren't for the sake of her daughter, did she think she would be willing to come to this place that smelled of disinfectant? Li Qianxue's expression was a little unfriendly. She turned around and walked out. Su Qingsang realized that her last sentence was not very appropriate. But she had already said it. When she went back to the desk to pick up the folder and notes, she suddenly saw the box on it. After thinking for a moment, she picked it up and handed it to Li Qianxue the moment she opened the door. "That. Auntie, this is a small souvenir I bought in Japan. For you." Li Qianxue almost laughed at Su Qingsang's action. She glanced at the box with a bow on it. "You bought too much, didn't you? You can't give it out? For me? You want me to not pursue the matter of your mother?" Su Qingsang forced herself to calm down and said extremely calmly, "How could that be? It was originally for you. Really. I was planning to send it to the old mansion after work." Li Qianxue looked at her draft, which didn't even lie. She sneered and didn't take the box. She glanced at the assistant. The assistant took the box with great sensitivity. Because of this small episode, Li Qianxue, who was about to leave, stopped for a moment. Su Qingsang, don't be petty in front of me. You will know that it was a mistake. How could I? Su Qingsang blinked and looked extremely sincere. I really gave it to you with sincerity. Even if it wasn't, it could only be after what she did just now. Li Qianxue didn't pay any more attention to her. She stepped on her high heels and left with a cold face. After she left, Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. It was really tiring to deal with someone like Li Qianxue. However, she really had to think about it carefully. There was still nearly a month before the new year. She would go to Song City for an exchange for half a month. When she came back, she would pack up and settle things. Then she would go to Rong City. Chapter 376. On the other end, Li Qianxue arrived at the company late. The regular meeting had already ended. She, the vice president, wasn't there. Su Qinghui had handled these matters very well. Su Peijian called and said that she would have lunch with her at noon. Li Qianxue hung up and asked the assistant to book a table. It was Su Peijian's favorite restaurant. When the assistant entered the door, he brought the box in. After finishing what Li Qianxue had asked, he put the box on the desk. President Li, this? Throw it away? Li Qianxue said without looking up, as if she had just seen it. Her voice was too cold and her tone was too firm. The assistant looked at the box and felt a little pity. However, he still picked it up. Then I'll throw it away. Throw it away. Remember to throw it far away. The assistant nodded and left with the box. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian sitting in front of her. The wounds on her face were barely visible after being treated yesterday. Su Peijian majored in business administration. She was also involved in the recent cooperation with Tianyu Group. Mom, weren't you at the meeting this morning? Where did you go? You didn't even answer my calls. Su Peijian asked casually, but Li Qianxue's reaction stunned her. Mom, what's wrong? Nothing. Don't you have your dad? Don't mention it. Su Peijian was actually a little dissatisfied with Su Qinghui. But only a little. There was nothing that she couldn't say to her mother. I asked my dad to vent his anger on that woman, but he refused. I'm actually very angry. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian and frowned because of her words. Your father actually refused to do it? Yes. Not only did he refuse, but he also told me that there was no need to settle the score with them now. He also said that we are now working with the Huo family. It would be bad if we offend Huo Jinyao. So what if it's Huo Jinyao? Thinking of this, Su Peijian felt a little annoyed. He's just from Rong City. He's famous. Why should we be afraid of him? Your dad has a point. Li Qianxue didn't continue to cause trouble for Su Qingsang today. Wasn't it because of Huo Jinyao? Mom, why do you say that too? Su Peijian was getting more and more annoyed. He glared at Li Qianxue, his face full of resentment. Peijian. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian. For now, the bigger picture is more important. You should listen to your father first. Su Peijian looked unconvinced. However, thinking of what Su Qinghui had said, she relaxed a little. Forget it. Of course I listened to my dad. My father said that he has already thought of a way to deal with them. Really? Li Qianxue picked up the cup of tea in front of her and took a sip. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at Su Peijian. Do you think your father has thought about how to deal with Su Qingsang and her mother? Yeah. Su Peijian didn't understand why Li Qianxue's expression had changed, but she still repeated what Su Qinghui had said that morning. My dad will definitely stand up for me. You should know that he has always loved me the most. Although Su Peijian still hadn't vented her anger, it had dissipated a lot. Moreover, Su Qinghui's promise made her even more proud. No matter what, she believed in Su Qinghui. If he said he would take revenge for her, he would. She just needed to wait for Su Qinghui and Xiang Kaiping to be punished. Li Qianxue nodded. However, when she saw Su Peijian's face, she suddenly thought of what Su Qingsang had said to her today. She said, no matter how much my mother loves my father, she will never be with him again. Because she recognizes me now. She knows that my father has ignored me for so many years. My mother loves me so much that she can't even talk about being with my father anymore. She blames my father. She hates him so much. She can't even forgive my father. She doesn't even want to talk to him. Li Qianxue's hand that was holding the cup suddenly stopped. The thought that had flashed through his mind before came back to him again. The person Su Qinghui liked was Xiang Kaiping. She knew that very well. However, for so many years he had been as cold to Su Qingsang as he could be. He ignored her as much as he could. On the contrary, he was quite good to Su Peijian. Almost like he was holding her in the palm of his hand. Even the patriarchal attitude that some people in Lin City had was not seen in him at all. Not to mention the fact that Su Qinghui didn't treat Su Yusin as well as Su Peijian did. Su Peijian had been at home for more than 10 years when she went to school. But what about Su Yusin? As soon as he entered high school, he was sent to boarding school by Su Qinghui. He could only come back once a week. At that time, she seemed to have objected, but she couldn't resist the reason Su Qinghui gave her. She said that boys needed to exercise. But what about Su Qinghui and Su Qingseng? He was even colder than Su Yusin. For so many years, she had never seen Su Qinghui smile at Su Qingseng. Except for the routine greetings during Chinese New Year, Su Qinghui almost ignored Su Qingseng. If the person Su Qinghui loved was really Xiang Kaiping, then his reaction to Su Qingseng was a little too strange. At least a little too abnormal. That wasn't the attitude a man should have toward the woman he loved. Instead, it was like he was treating someone unrelated to him. Why did Su Qinghui treat Su Qingseng like this? You have to know that he has always loved me the most. Su Peijian's words just now appeared in her mind at the same time. Yes, the person Su Qinghui loved the most was Su Peijian, and the person he disliked the least was Su Qingseng. But thinking about it this way was completely unreasonable. Not only was it unreasonable, but it also made Li Qianxue, who had never seriously thought about this strange situation, more and more suspicious. It was not normal, it was very abnormal. There must be something wrong when things were abnormal. So if Su Qinghui treated Su Qingseng badly and Su Peijian well, then what was normal? Normally, Su Qinghui should be the one who treated Su Peijian well and Su Qingseng well, right? Mom? She didn't speak, so Su Peijian called her. Li Qianxue didn't hear her. She was thinking about her question just now. Just what was wrong with this? She couldn't think of it at the moment, but the words between Su Qingseng and Su Peijian were like a replay, constantly going back and forth in her mind. The strange feeling that something was wrong came again. In a flash, Li Qianxue seemed to think of a key point. She just wanted to figure out that key point. Mom? Su Peijian called out even louder than before. Li Qianxue was shocked. Peijian? Mom, are you okay? When Su Peijian asked, she deliberately waved her hand in front of Li Qianxue. Chapter 377. Her thoughts had been interrupted and she couldn't continue thinking. Seeing that Su Peijian still wanted to wake her up, Li Qianxue reached out and held her hand. It was rare that her tone was harsher than usual. How old are you? Why are you still so careless? I saw that you were ignoring me. Su Peijian pouted, obviously feeling a little wronged. Mom was thinking about something and now you've interrupted me? Mom, what are you thinking about? Su Peijian couldn't control her curiosity. Tell me? You. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian again and suddenly wanted to compare her with Su Qingseng. Speaking of which, Su Peijian was about the same age as Su Qingseng. Su Peijian was naturally prettier. But in terms of stability, Su Qingseng was much more stable than Su Peijian. She didn't know if it was because she and Su Qinghui had spoiled this child too much. Li Qianxue's heart suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She had spent so much effort to raise her daughter. In the end, she couldn't compare to Su Qingseng, an illegitimate daughter who grew up freely on her own? Wasn't this a slap to her face? Li Qianxue suddenly sat up straight. She looked at Su Peijian's face and was momentarily lost in thought. So, this was Su Qinghui's revenge? If this was Su Qinghui's revenge, then all his previous actions, those favoritism for Su Peijian, and his disregard for Su Qingseng could be explained. Overpraise? It was the most common method of wealthy families. Indulging their children. It made them arrogant and willful. In the end, they even caused a lot of trouble. Was Su Qinghui planning to do that? It was completely possible. Su Qinghui probably wanted to spoil Su Peijian and lead her in a bad direction. However, because there was still her and old Master Li at home, she couldn't let him get what he wanted. Even so, Su Peijian's personality was more arrogant than that of the other rich young ladies in Lin City. Li Qianxue had forgotten that she had wanted to spoil this daughter of hers. She had given birth to a child that she had carried in her womb for 10 months. Naturally, she couldn't pamper him enough. However, now that he had noticed Su Qinghui's actions, he seemed to have figured out what kind of sinister intentions he had. Su Qinghui, so that's what you're planning? What kind of plan was this? Mom? What happened to you? Su Peijian didn't have time to figure out why Li Qianxue had acted strangely just now. However, her expression made her a little worried. Mom, are you really okay? I'm fine. Li Qianxue didn't look well. When she thought of Su Qinghui, she naturally thought of what he had done. Li Qianxue felt a fire burning in her heart. She couldn't wait to rush to Su Qinghui and argue with him. However, Li Qianxue wasn't such an impulsive person. Moreover, she believed that she had seen through Su Qinghui's sinister intentions. How could she argue with him at this time? Patient. Speaking of which, you're not young anymore. There are some things that I think you should know your limits. Mom? Su Peijian was confused. Just talk about the conflict you had with that woman in Japan last time. I don't believe that you didn't say or do anything. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. Mom, why are you talking about me like that? It doesn't matter what I say about you. What matters is that you're mature now and have grown up. You can't deal with your circle of friends and social circles like you deal with business. Take Su Qingsang as an example. She is indeed someone we should avoid provoking now. Then the next time you see her, just ignore her. Of course, if she takes the initiative to bully you, you can naturally fight back. But if you take the initiative to provoke her, it will be easy for people to talk about you. Do you understand what I mean? Li Qianxue said sincerely. In her heart, she really hoped that her daughter could have a good personality and a good future. The engagement with the Chiu family was no longer valid. If Su Peijian wanted to marry better than the Chiu family or be similar to the Chiu family, she had to restrain her personality. Mom, so you mean that I should tolerate Su Qingsang? Let her do what she wants? Why should I? Look at you, you're angry again. I want you to ignore her. If you ignore her, she won't be able to do anything. Don't you think so? Su Peijian didn't say anything. She looked at Li Qianxue's face. Her words were very similar to Su Qinghui's. She sighed in her heart. Okay, I got it. I'll just stay away from her next time. Is that okay? She knew that her daughter was still not convinced. Li Qianxue didn't say anything else. Anyway, Su Peijian would find out in the future. At this time, the waiter began to serve the dishes. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter and talked about the company again. The little bit of displeasure just now disappeared without a trace. The faint thought that she had almost been caught by her in a flash completely disappeared under her daughter's smiling face. However, everything today had become a temporarily hidden fire. She didn't know when it would burn up and illuminate all her doubts. After Su Qingsang came out of the shower, her eyes fell on the box on the dressing table. There was a layer of blue wrapping paper on the outside of the box. This time there was no tacky bow. It looked simple and clean. This was a gift she specially bought for Su Yusen. However, it wasn't the weekend yet. Su Yusen was still in school. She suddenly remembered that she had given the rest of her hand to Li Qianxue today. Li Qianxue would probably be so angry that she would want to throw it away. Thinking about it, it was a pity. However, when she thought about Li Qianxue's face at that time, she didn't feel that it was a pity. Instead, she felt happy. What are you thinking about? Smiling like a fox? Hua Jinyao was behind her and happened to see her giggle in the mirror. He reached out and easily pulled her small body into his arms. Nothing. Su Qingsang shook her head and decided not to tell Hua Jinyao that Li Qianxue went to find trouble with her today. Is it really nothing? Hua Jinyao put his hand on her waist and the threat was obvious. Are you going to tell me or not? Su Qingsang raised her hands to surrender. She was really scared of Hua Jinyao. I was just thinking about when to send this to Su Yusen. This was not the truth, but Hua Jinyao didn't intend to expose it immediately. You can send it to him anytime. If it weren't for the fact that Su Yusen still had some sibling feelings for Su Qingsang, he wouldn't have let her send this gift. Hua Jinyao suddenly sat up straight and turned Su Qingsang's face to look at him. Honey, speaking of which, you went to Japan. You played with Mom for a few days. In such a short time, you brought gifts for the people in your department and Su Yusen. What about me? Where is my gift? Chapter 378. Su Qingsang was stunned by Hua Jinyao's words. She rubbed the tip of her nose and curled her lips awkwardly at Hua Jinyao. You don't lack anything. I don't know what to give you either. Su Qingsang. Hua Jinyao was angered by her words. What do you mean I don't lack anything? Can you not give me anything just because I don't lack anything? Do the people in your department lack something? Does Su Yusen lack something? He was her husband after all. They should be closer than others, right? But what happened? Everyone had a gift, but he didn't. Only he didn't. Seeing that Hua Jinyao was really angry, Su Qingsang lowered her voice. That's different. How is it different? Their relationship with me is not the relationship I have with you. Hua Jinyao's face darkened because of her words. He didn't intend to let it go. What relationship do we have? Could it be that in your heart, your relationship with Su Yusin is closer than the relationship between you and me? If she dared to say that, Hua Jinyao would definitely punish her today and let her know that their relationship was much closer and deeper than Su Yusin's. I didn't mean that. Hua Jinyao got up and went back to the bed, looking like he didn't want to talk to her. Su Qingsang bit her lip and saw that he was really angry. She got up and sat down on the bed. She reached out to touch Hua Jinyao's arm, but he ignored her. He turned his back to her. Are you really angry? Yes. Very angry? Very angry. He had his back to her, so Su Qingsang couldn't see the expression on his face. After thinking about it, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. Can you calm down now? No. Hua Jinyao said that, but his expression didn't change at all. Then what about this? Su Qingsang leaned over and kissed him on the lips again. Not yet. If Su Qingsang couldn't see that this person was doing it on purpose, then she would have spent all this time with him for nothing. Her red lips rose. She didn't kiss him again. Instead, she put her hand next to him and put one hand on his arm. I said that our relationship is different from theirs because I feel that our relationship is closer. Since it was a closer relationship. In that case it would be the same with or without this gift. But they were different. My relationship with them can be strengthened by gifts. But I don't need it with you. If Hua Jinyao didn't turn around, he wouldn't know if he was appeased or not. I really didn't mean to ignore you. Because I don't know what to give you. She didn't have much experience with men. The wallet, belt, and the like that were usually used by men. The ones Hua Jinyao used were custom-made. When she went to Japan to buy those for him, she was afraid that he wouldn't like them. I need it. I need it very much. Hua Jinyao didn't turn around. As long as it's from you. I want every blade of grass. Can't I? Sure. What will you do if I really forget to buy you a present? What can we do? Anyway, I'm very angry now. Very unhappy. Hua Jinyao didn't want to let it go. Su Qingsang looked at his back. She called him again, but he still didn't turn around. Su Qingsang looked down at the bathrobe she was wearing. She had been wearing a bathrobe since she took a shower. However, Hua Jinyao didn't notice that she didn't wear pajamas after taking a shower like before. She gritted her teeth, stood up and left the bed. Hua Jinyao was angry with her. After coaxing her for so long, why didn't she coax him a little longer? He was angry. He decided to teach Su Qingsang a good lesson later. Let her know what a husband's power was. No, not just a lesson. He wanted. Hearing the rustling sound behind him, that woman still didn't know to come over? Hua Jinyao was angry. It was really infuriating to marry such a wooden wife. He sat up and was about to press Su Qingsang under his body to teach her a lesson, but he was shocked by the scene in front of him. Su Qingsang's bathrobe had been taken off by herself. Her clothes were exposed. That was, Hua Jinyao blinked and looked at Su Qingsang's head. She was dressed as a cat girl and had a pair of cat ears on her head. She was obviously not used to this kind of outfit. She was very uncomfortable and didn't know where to put her hands and feet. Actually, I also prepared a gift for you. It was the first time in Su Qingsang's life that she had done such a thing. She was really embarrassed. My gift is myself. Hua Jinyao, who had always been calm and collected, looked at the cute cat ears on Su Qingsang's head and the fluffy cat tail behind her. Coupled with the outfit she was wearing, he suddenly got off the bed and carried Su Qingsang. This is your gift? Su Qingsang's face was as red as an apple. Her eyes wandered around, but she didn't dare to look at Hua Jinyao. When did you buy it? He didn't believe that she would dare to buy it with Xiang Kaiping accompanying her. Su Qingsang's face became even redder. Not only her face but her whole body was covered with a layer of red. How could she tell him that she was shopping in Japan? Xiang Kaiping wanted to go to the bathroom and Yumei took her there. She happened to see the lingerie shop next door, and the shop owner put the kitten outfit on the mannequin outside. Not only kittens but there were also bunnies, nurses' uniforms and so on in the shop. She thought of Hua Jinyao and for some reason she bought 2 sets of lingerie like that. Only this? Hua Jinyao put her on the bed and folded on top of her. Or do you have something else? Yes, there is something else. Su Qingsang's face became even redder. In fact, she had wanted to wear it for him when she came back last night. However, Su Qinghui suddenly appeared yesterday and she forgot about it. What is it? Hua Jinyao's eyes were hot. He stared at the pair of golden kitten ears on Su Qingsang's head and felt his heart itch. Rabbit ears. Su Qingsang didn't dare to look at Hu Jinyao's face at all. She really felt like her whole body was burning. Hu Jinyao lowered his head and kissed her lips. "Wear it for me tomorrow." Su Qingsang nodded lightly. Hu Jinyao was satisfied. He kissed her cheek and moved closer to her ear. "I like this gift. I like it very much." Su Qingsang was so embarrassed that her body curled up. She wanted to avoid Hu Jinyao's lips but failed. Then Hu Jinyao used his actions to prove to her how much he liked this gift. After midnight, Su Qingsang regretted it. She shouldn't have given this gift at all, because someone obviously liked it too much. He repeated in her ear over and over again how much he loved this gift. Over and over again he told her how much he liked this gift. Chapter 379. Su Qingsang almost couldn't get up the next day after being disturbed by Hu Jinyao for most of the night. She gritted her teeth and wanted to find the rabbit set and throw it away before washing up. However, she couldn't find it anymore. She blushed. She didn't need to think to know who took it. For a moment she was angry, annoyed, regretful, and a little expectant. After washing up, she walked out of the room. Xiang Kaiping had already prepared breakfast. "Qingsang, don't you need to go to work today?" "I need to go to work. I'll go after breakfast." Su Qingsang's waist was a little weak and she looked a little embarrassed. In the past, she didn't feel it when she lived with Hu Jinyao alone. However, Xiang Kaiping was at home now, and Hu Jinyao still didn't know how to control himself. It made her really uncomfortable. As expected, during breakfast, Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang and wanted to say something. "Mom, what's wrong?" Su Qingsang thought that something was wrong. She wasn't there yesterday. Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue wouldn't come to trouble her again, would they? Su Qingsang was a little worried. She was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would be at a disadvantage. "Qingsang, don't be angry if I tell you." Xiang Caiping's words made Su Qingsang nervous. Li Qianxue didn't teach her a lesson. Did they really come again? "I know that you and Jinyao are young couples. It's inevitable that you are a little passionate. But you still have to control yourself." Su Qingsang blinked. When she realized what Xiang Kaiping said, she was suddenly embarrassed. "Mom, don't be angry. I'm not blaming you. I just think that you still have to care about your health. Don't you think so?" Xiang Kaiping was an experienced person. She could understand the young people's passion for each other. However, seeing that her daughter's health was obviously not good, she was really worried. "Don't think too much. I don't want to interfere with your private affairs. I just think that Jinyao doesn't know how to control himself." She looked at Su Qingsang's walking posture and knew that she had a hard time yesterday. Her daughter had to go to work today. However, he really didn't know how to feel sorry for her. "Mom?" Su Qingsang tried her best to remain calm and tried her best to make her expression look normal. "You're only saying this to me, aren't you? I also told Jinyao." Xiang Kaiping was not with Su Qingsang in the past. She felt sorry for her daughter. Now that he had recognized a daughter, he naturally wanted to pamper her and make up for the lost time. She was happy that Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao loved each other so much. But looking at Hu Jinyao's body, and then looking at Su Qingsang's petite figure, Hu Jinyao's heart skipped a beat. Xiang Caiping's heart ached for her daughter. "Mom." Su Qingsang was embarrassed. For an elder to say something like this, it was really, you don't have to feel embarrassed. Jinyao knew he was wrong. "He promised me." Xiang Kaiping was actually a little embarrassed to say this. He always felt like he was pointing fingers at a young man. But if she didn't say it, she really couldn't help it. "All right, Mom. I got it." Su Qingsang couldn't sit still anymore. She lowered her head and covered up the waves of discomfort by eating. Because of this, Su Qingsang forgot to tell him her plan. The next day, the people from the administrative office came to ask her about it. Zhou Hongqian reported her name, and the people from the administrative office asked if she was willing to go to Song City Central Hospital to participate in the exchange program. Of course, Su Qingsang was willing. She had been studying cervical cancer recently, and there was a doctor in Song City who was very experienced in this area. The departure time was 3 days later. Su Qingsang only remembered that she seemed to have forgotten to tell Hu Jinyao about it. Was this considered acting first and reporting later? Su Qingsang finally remembered to mention it when they were having dinner that night. "I'll go for the exchange program for half a month. There is a Professor Wu in Song City, and I have always wanted to learn from her." Hu Jinyao and Xiang Kaiping looked at each other. Both of them were a little surprised by Su Qingsang's decision. "Qingsang, I don't object to the exchange program. But why do we have to go to a place so far away from Song City?" Song City was in another province, very far from Lin City. Although it was as developed as Lin City, it was still not as comfortable as being at home. Xiang Kaiping and her daughter had just gotten to know each other. She really couldn't bear to be separated for half a month. We have a collaboration with Song City Central Hospital, Su Qingsang explained very patiently. This time this opportunity is also very rare. Since the hospital has given me this opportunity, of course I have to cherish it. Huo Jinyao didn't say anything. He knew how focused Su Qingsang was. She could ignore him for a week for the sake of a thesis or a research project. It was understandable that she wanted to go to Song City. But it will be the new year by the time you come back. Xiang Kaiping was still a little worried. If this time is delayed for a few days, won't you be able to come back in time for the new year? Mom, what are you thinking about? Su Qingsang wanted to laugh, but also felt a little sad. Mom, we said half a month, so it will be half a month. I will definitely come back in half a month. Besides, I still want to come back to spend the new year with you guys. Really? Of course. After saying this, Su Qingsang thought of her promise to Li Qianxue. She turned to look at Huo Jinyao. Shall we go to Rong City for the new year this year? Rong City? Huo Jinyao didn't say anything. Xiang Kaiping was stunned. Why are we going to Rong City? Mom? Jinyao is from Rong City. It is normal for us to go to Rong City for the new year. Besides, Mom, haven't you always been in Rong City? I also want to see where you used to live. Xiang Kaiping was a smart person. She immediately thought of the key point. Wanting to go to Rong City was not the real reason. She wanted to avoid Su Qinghui and his family, right? Huo Jinyao didn't say anything. When he heard Su Qingsang say this, he looked up at her and said, You will go to Rong City after the new year and not come back? You can say that. Su Qingsang nodded. Since she had promised Li Qianxue, of course she would do it. She was actually not afraid of a direct confrontation with Li Qianxue, and she didn't believe that Li Qianxue would really dare to do anything to her. After all, she still had Su Qinghui and Huo Jinyao. Moreover, Li Qianxue was an extremely prideful person. It wasn't her style to let go of her pride to deal with a little illegitimate daughter like her. After all these years, she and Li Qianxue could live in harmony. She knew that as long as she didn't step on Li Qianxue's bottom line, Li Qianxue wouldn't do anything to her. Since Su Qingsang had already made up her mind, the matter was settled. Su Qingsang would go to Song City for an exchange program. When she came back, the family would pack up and go to Rong City together. Xiang Kaiping didn't care. Wherever her daughter went, she would go. Chapter 380. Will you come back later? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang. Although she had only lived in this place for less than 2 months, she already felt a little reluctant to leave. Wasn't it nice to be here? Only his daughter and son-in-law, no other outsiders. If he went to Rong City, Huo Jinyao's family must be very rich. By then, would Su Qingsang really be able to handle those interpersonal relationships and things? How could living with her mother-in-law be as comfortable as living with her husband and wife outside? Mom, of course I have to come back. Su Qingsang had some things to pack. He also handed over his work in the hospital. More importantly, if she were to work in a hospital in Rong City, she would need a recommendation letter from the hospital here. She could rely on Huo Jinyao, but she preferred to rely on herself. She believed she had the ability. After dinner, she chatted with Xiang Kaiping for a while. That included where they would stay after they arrived at Rong City. Su Qingsang had already thought of how to settle them down. She was also afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel uncomfortable. He told her that he would definitely live with her in the future. Only then did Xiang Kaiping feel somewhat relieved. As long as she wasn't living with her mother-in-law, everything was fine. It wasn't that she looked down on her daughter. Indeed, in terms of status, she was much lower than Huo Jinyao. She was also afraid that her daughter would be at a disadvantage. Su Qingsang was touched by Xiang Caiping's concern for her. After comforting her for a long time, she finally felt more at ease. Besides, there was still Huo Jinyao. Huo Jinyao also promised that he would not let Su Qingsang suffer. With his assurance, Xiang Kaiping could only put her mind at ease. The three of them chatted and laughed for a while before Xiang Kaiping dispelled all her worries. As soon as he returned to his room, Huo Jinyao's expression changed. He looked at Su Qingsang, his eyes full of wisdom. What's wrong with you? Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable under his gaze. Why are you looking at me like that? Huo Jinyao narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Qingsang from head to toe. Go ahead. What? Su Qingsang blinked. She didn't believe that Huo Jinyao could guess it. Did the Su family cause you trouble? Huo Jinyao hit the nail on the head. Su Qingsang almost couldn't hold back her laughter. Nonsense, there's no such thing. Oh. Hu Jingyao raised his eyebrows. You weren't this enthusiastic when I asked you to go to Rong City before. I'm just happy that it's almost the new year and I've recognized a mother. Oh. Hu Jingyao thought of the Su family members. Your father? Li Qianxue? Or Su Peixian? You're thinking too much. I really didn't. Su Qingsang almost raised 3 fingers to swear. I really didn't. Su Peixian suffered in Japan, so I don't think she'll bother you again. Su Qinghui had been here last time. Besides, he wouldn't go to the extent of finding trouble with you. That is Li Qianxue. Hu Jingyao took a step forward. His deep gaze was sharp and direct. Li Qianxue looked for you? Su Qingsang felt a little helpless. It was really not a good thing to have a husband who was too smart. Why did she come to me? Even if she didn't come to find me, I would still go to Rong City. It really is her. Hu Jingyao had already gotten her answer. He looked Su Qingsang up and down. Did she do it? No. Su Qingsang quickly denied it. I really didn't. Why would a person like her hit me? She didn't hit you? Hu Jingyao didn't believe it. No, why would she look for you? You can't hide the fact that your mother is back. But I don't think your father would tell her. Even if she wanted to look for someone, she would look for your mother. Why did she look for you? Su Qingsang began to feel a headache. Hu Jingyao, you actually don't have to be so smart. Hu Jingyao narrowed his eyes. If you don't tell me, I'll ask our mother directly. Don't. I'm really scared of you. Su Qingsang avoided the topic and didn't say that Li Qianxue hit her. She only said that she did come to find trouble with her, but there were many people in the hospital, and she promised her that she would go to Rong City in the future. That's right. You see, I decided to go to Rong City. Didn't we agree before? I just went a little earlier. As Su Qingsang spoke, she held Hu Jinyao's hand. Don't be angry. She didn't do anything to me. As for taking my mother to Rong City, even if she didn't say it, I would think so. After all, if my mother stayed in Lin City, she would run into my father's family. Hu Jingyao wasn't angry. He stared at the guilty look on her face. You haven't told me why Li Qianxue came to look for you. Su Qingsang's eyes looked around, but she didn't look at Hu Jingyao. She didn't need to tell Hu Jingyao about the conflict with Su Peixian in Japan. Who knows? Maybe she knows that my mother is back. Wife. Hu Jingyao squeezed her palm a little hard. Do you know that you are really a bad liar? Really? Su Qingsang blinked. So I didn't lie. Hu Jingyao looked at her and let go. Okay, I suddenly think it's better for me to ask our mother. I'll also tell your mother about Li Qianxue coming to look for you. I don't think your mother knows, does she? Su Qingsang was defeated by him. She quickly grabbed his hand and said, actually, it's really not a big deal. She hesitantly mentioned the conflict in Japan. Actually, I wasn't injured and I didn't suffer any losses. It's just that my mother was too impatient. She slapped Su Peixian in the face. Hu Jinyao's face was a little gloomy. He stared at Su Qingsang's eyes for a long time without saying a word. Su Qingsang begged for mercy. Don't be like this. It's really nothing. She even got slapped in the face. Hu Jinyao still didn't speak. Su Qingsang felt more and more helpless. Look at her. Who dares to hit her since she was a child? My mother has already stood up for me. I didn't suffer any losses from Auntie. So let's just let it go, okay? Hu Jinyao looked at her face and understood what she meant. It was better to avoid trouble. However, she was willing to let it go, but he was not. Holding her hand, Hu Jinyao's voice was very soft. Wife, I hope you understand one thing. You're my wife. She's my wife. If others bully you, it's the same as bullying me. Next time you encounter something like this, don't care who they are. Just hit them back. Hu Jinyao, how could she be so violent? Even if you're at a disadvantage. If you can't beat them, it's okay. Come back and tell me. Su Qingsang looked at his serious eyes and the domineering tone in his words. She wanted to laugh but also wanted to cry. Are you trying to instigate me to fight outside? No. Hu Jinyao put his arm around her waist. I want to tell you. When you encounter those who don't have eyes, don't be polite and don't be afraid. Don't let others bully you. Chapter 381. I know. Su Qingsang blushed a little and leaned against Hu Jinyao's chest. Don't worry. I'm not the kind of person who will let myself suffer. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fought back when Li Qianxue came to her door. Really? Hu Jinyao didn't believe it. With her personality, she must have suffered a lot in the Su family in the past. Let bygones be bygones. Hua Jinyao would never let her suffer again in the future. Su Qingsang's face was pressed against his chest, and she smelled his clean, masculine scent. Suddenly she burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Su Qingsang thought of Li Qianshue's angry look yesterday. Actually, I fought back yesterday. She just didn't fight back clearly. Meeting Hua Jinyao's probing gaze, she told him about the gift she casually gave yesterday. She smiled a little proudly, like a little fox who had done something bad. She probably hasn't received such a casual gift in her life. Hua Jinyao imagined Li Qianshue's expression at that time and looked at Su Qingsang, who was laughing openly. He reached out and pinched her cheek. You also think it's funny, right? Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. Can you not be angry now? He wasn't angry. He was just not happy that she was hiding something from him. Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft as he held her up. Still angry, very angry. If you want to, I won't be angry. Why don't you do something that won't make me angry? The pride on Su Qingsang's face suddenly disappeared. There's no need. What do you think? Hua Jinyao didn't intend to let her go just like that. The kitten has worn it. The bunny hasn't worn it yet. Try it today. Don't. Su Qingsang suddenly chickened out. My waist is still weak. Hua Jinyao glared at her and looked a little disgusted. You're so useless. It's not that I'm useless. The moment Su Qingsang's body hit the bed, her tone quickened. Is that you're too useful? Hua Jinyao supported his body with one hand and looked at Su Qingsang's pleading face. He thought of this morning. Xiang Kaiping asked him to control himself and said that Su Qingsang's body was weak and couldn't take it. Are you really tired? I'm really tired. Su Qingsang bit her lip and put on a look of negotiation. How about tomorrow? Hua Jinyao looked at her and didn't continue. Turning over, he lay down beside her. Su Qingsang was relieved. She couldn't help but look at him again and found that he was also looking at her. His eyes were deep and spirited, like the stars in the night sky. Su Qingsang had to admit that no matter how many times she saw him, she would always be captivated by his handsomeness. She propped her hand up, leaned over and kissed his eyes. Hua Jinyao lowered his voice. Don't seduce me. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep my promise. Su Qingsang stopped talking, made a zipping gesture, and quickly slipped down from the other side of the bed. I'm going to shower. Looking at the closed door of the bathroom, Hua Jinyao still had a fire burning in his body, but it had subsided a lot. He thought about what Su Qingsang had said. It was good to go to Rong City. Since there was still more than half a month's time, he could take advantage of this opportunity to arrange things here. He believed that if they were going back to Rong City, Grandpa would be very happy, right? Su Qingsang decided to go to Song City for the exchange program. There were also a lot of things to pack. The hospital let them go home one day in advance to pack their things. The plane to Song City was at 10 o'clock the next morning. They could go to the airport by themselves or go to the hospital. The hospital car would take them there. Su Qingsang was gone for half a month. Hua Jinyao, who had considerately let her rest for the night yesterday, didn't intend to endure it anymore today. He only let Su Qingsang go after torturing her for a long time. The next day, Su Qingsang couldn't open her eyes. It was Hua Jinyao who carried her. He knew that he had gone a little overboard yesterday. He carried her into the bathroom and helped her to wash up. Xiang Kaiping stood in the living room and watched Su Qingsang walk out with her suitcase in her hand. She wanted to say something but stopped. If Su Qingsang wasn't going for the exchange program, she would have followed her. Mom, I'm leaving. Did you bring enough clothes? Did you bring everything? How's the weather over there? Did you put an umbrella in your bag? What if it snows? Mom. Su Qingsang put her hand on her forehead. I brought enough. Song City is hotter than Lin City. I brought my umbrella. It won't snow over there. Don't worry. That's good, that's good. Xiang Kaiping was still worried. Take good care of yourself when you get there. Don't be too busy. No matter how hard I work, my health is more important. For so many years, Su Qingsang had always been alone, whether she was studying or going out. After marrying Hua Jinyao, he had become a person who did more than he said. This was the first time someone had nagged her about what she should pay attention to when she went out. She couldn't help but give Xiang Kaiping a hug. I'm not a kid anymore. Don't worry. I will take good care of myself. That's good. That's good. Xiang Kaiping repeated this sentence over and over again. He felt conflicted and gratified at the same time. Su Qingsang knew that if she wasn't at home, Xiang Kaiping's imagination would run wild. It was better to find something for her to do. Mom, didn't you say you knew how to make bacon and sausages? I think the weather in Lin City is quite good these days. If you have nothing to do, why don't you make something delicious? When I come back. Okay. Xiang Kaiping seemed to be suddenly energized. I know how to make bacon and sausages. I even know how to make beef jerky. If you like it, I'll make more. That's great. Su Qingsang blinked at Hu Jiniao as she spoke. Jiniao likes it very much too. Thank you. It's not hard at all. Xiang Kaiping wanted to do something for her daughter. How could she feel that it was hard? After sending Su Qingsang off, she began to think about what ingredients she wanted to buy. Speaking of which, she hadn't done it for many years. She was a little worried that she couldn't do it. Hu Jiniao helped Su Qingsang carry her luggage into the car and closed the door for her. Before starting the car, he glanced at her. You asked so much in one go. Aren't you afraid that your mother will tire herself out? Don't worry. She can't stay idle. I've already calculated everything. When I come back, she'll be almost done. Hu Jiniao smiled and reached out to rub the top of her head. Right? What do you mean by my mother? Isn't my mother your mother? Besides, my mother is tired. Don't you know how to remind her when you're at home? Su Qingsang blinked at him with obvious dissatisfaction in her eyes. Chapter 382. That's more like it. Su Qingsang smiled. When she smiled, the corners of her eyes were tinged with joy. Her facial features, which could only be considered beautiful, were particularly dazzling at this time. Hu Jiniao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Remember to miss me. Su Qingsang blinked and said, We'll see. I miss you whenever I have time. If I don't have time, I won't think about it. Hu Jiniao stepped on the accelerator, glanced at her and said calmly, Don't worry. I have a way to make you miss me every day. Su Qingsang snorted with a look of disbelief. However, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. The winter sun outside the car window was just right. She stretched out her hand and watched as the light shone on her hand, dyeing it with a layer of gold. This kind of life was really good and blissful. She had a man she liked as her husband and a mother who loved her dearly. She really wanted to be happy like this forever. She thought, I should be happy forever, right? Su Qingsang didn't know until she got on the plane. Other than her, Zhuo Hongchen was also among the doctors participating in the exchange. When she got on the plane and saw Zhuo Hongchen, her first reaction was to thank Hu Jiniao for not knowing. Her second reaction was, would Hu Jiniao be angry if he found out? It couldn't be, right? Even if he wanted to be angry. She's on the plane. That was it. Junior sister, you've come? When Zhuo Hongchen saw Su Qingsang, he stood up and extended his hand to her. Come, I'll help you put your luggage on it. Thank you. Senior brother Zhuo. You're welcome. Zhuo Hongchen was a man, so he easily picked up Su Qingsang's luggage and put it on the floor. Did you not rest well? The moment Su Qingsang sat down, she realized that not only was Zhuo Hongchen there, but the two of them were sitting together. Was this really not arranged by Zhuo Hongchen? As if sensing her confusion, Zhuo Hongchen took the initiative to explain. When I found out about the exchange program, the first thing I did was to inform the administration and recommend you. Maybe it's because of this that our positions are together. It's okay. Su Qingsang waved her hand. It's okay to sit together. I happen to have a question to ask you. You're being too polite by saying that you're asking for advice. If you have any questions, just ask. Thank you, senior brother. Su Qingsang sat down. The rest of the journey became a medical exchange with Zhuo Hongchen. As for the fact that Zhuo Hongchen was going to the exchange program with her, there was no need to tell Hu Jiniao. Thinking of a certain someone's jealousy, the corners of Su Qingsang's mouth turned up, and she smiled happily. Zhuo Hongchen had just returned from the bathroom and saw the smile on Su Qingsang's face. It was a smile that only appeared when he thought of his lover or lover. His expression darkened as he sighed in his heart. Sure enough, he was late. And Su Qingsang should be living a happy life, right? Xiang Kaiping had been busy ever since her daughter left. The sweater is almost finished. There were still 2 more sleeves to go. She wanted to finish it before her daughter came back. My daughter wants to eat sausages, bacon, and beef jerky. That was not difficult. The weather in Lin City was good these days. She had already decided the sausage first. Hu Jiniao noticed that Xiang Kaiping seemed to be more energetic every day since she had something to do. The little impact caused by Su Qinghui's appearance seemed to have disappeared. He could not help but feel that no one knew their mother better than their daughter. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping had been mother and daughter for less than 2 months, but the mother-daughter relationship was already very deep. With the heart to busy herself for her daughter, He did not have to worry about Xiang Kaiping being bored. When he told Su Qingsang about this, she was half guilty and half touched. She really just said it casually, but Xiang Caiping's positive attitude made her a little speechless. She secretly decided that when she returned to Lin City, she would treat Xiang Kaiping better. She had to treat her better. Xiang Kaiping treated Su Qingsang well, not because she wanted her to return the favor. She wanted to make up for the motherly love that had been missing for so many years. For the next week or so, Xiang Kaiping cured sausages, bacon and beef jerky, which were the special New Year products of Lin City. She also helped Su Qingsang knit the remaining 2 sleeves of the sweater. The white sweater looked very clean and refreshing. Xiang Kaiping also knitted a few mulberry leaves on the front of the sweater, and the crisscrossed lines looked very delicate. Xiang Kaiping finished knitting, but felt that something was missing. The sweater was not high-collared, and she was afraid that it would be cold when she went to Rong City. After thinking about it, Xiang Kaiping decided to buy some wool tomorrow and knit a scarf for Su Qingsang. Not only could she knit it for Su Qingsang, she could also give one to Hu Jinyao. During this period of time, Hu Jinyao had also been taking good care of her. Xiang Kaiping was not an ungrateful person. Hu Jinyao was very good to Su Qingsang, and he was also very good to her. She now not only treated Su Qingsang as her daughter, but also Hu Jinyao as her son-in-law. Knitting a scarf was easier, so she did it immediately. Xiang Kaiping went out early the next day. She went to buy wool. Lin City had changed a lot in more than 20 years. If Su Qingsang had not taken her to many places before, Xiang Kaiping might not have been able to recognize it. Xiang Kaiping planned to go home after buying the wool. When she passed by a very famous shopping mall in Lin City, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She saw a rather luxurious jade shop next to the mall, and there was an exhibition in the window of the shop. It was a jade Buddha. Men wore guanyin and women wore Buddha. He recalled that his daughter was always in contact with patients and pregnant women in the hospital every day. He also had to run here and there to communicate with them. She wanted to buy this jade Buddha as a gift for her daughter. He entered the room. The shop was very big, and all the jade ornaments were arranged into several counters according to their types. There were jade bracelets, jade pendants, and jade ornaments. Xiang Kaiping glanced at it and walked directly to the counter where the jade pendant was sold. She asked the shop assistant to show her the jade Buddha. The shop assistant glanced at the clothes Xiang Kaiping was wearing and hesitated for a few seconds. "Auntie, this piece of jade is the treasure of our shop. It won't be cheap." Xiang Kaiping looked at the shop assistant from head to toe. However, he didn't get angry. "Miss, I'm old enough to be your mother. Do you think I'm here to tease you?" "Auntie, look at what you're saying. That's not what I meant." The shop assistant was a little embarrassed by Xiang Caiping's words. She turned around reluctantly to take the jade Buddha statue. The jade Buddha statue was not very big. It was just a little bigger than a pigeon's egg. It was a two-faced Buddha. The Maitreya Bodhisattva's big belly could accommodate. This jade Buddha statue was indeed very good, both in terms of the carving skills and the quality of the jade. When she was looking at it, the shop assistant was very worried and put her hand on the counter. Later, she felt that she was being too obvious, so she cleared her throat. "Auntie, be careful when you carry it." Chapter 383. The shop assistant was surprised to see that Xiang Kaiping was serious. "Auntie, this piece of jade is an old pit jade. It's the king of jade in Myanmar. Back then this jade, little girl, just tell me how much it is." "Auntie, the price of this jade is 550,000 yuan. Our shop is now offering a 20% discount on jade wares. After the discount, it still costs 440,000 yuan. Xiang Kaiping frowned. "That's not a good price. 440,000. It was too unpleasant to hear. Ask your boss if he can sell it for 390,000. Forever and ever." To tell the truth, no matter how good the quality of this jade artifact was, there was still a certain amount of water in it. From her point of view, this jade Buddha should be around 300,000. "Auntie, look at what you're saying. We're such a big shop and we don't specialize in your business. This was all at a discount. I can't go any lower after the discount." Xiang Kaiping looked conflicted. She really liked this piece of jade. He also felt that it was suitable for Qingsang. But 44 wasn't a good number, especially in the dialect of Lin City. For sounds the same as death. This made her even more displeased. The shop assistant sneered inwardly at Caiping's reaction. What did he mean by 440,000 not sounding good? Wasn't it because he didn't have money? "Little girl, how about this? You ask your boss. Can you sell it?" Xiang Kaiping was not short of tens of thousands of dollars. However, she hoped that it would be a good omen for her daughter. Today, if this jade Buddha statue could be bought for 390,000 yuan, she would buy it. Andy, that's really impossible. The shop assistant didn't even want to ask. Now she finally realized that this woman had no money at all. If she really asked, the boss would scold her. Little girl. You don't look like a businessman. You're not your boss. How do you know you can't buy it? Although I'm not the boss, I'm not the boss. But we have rules here. She would be a fool if she really went to ask. Xiang Caiping's expression was a little ugly. She naturally knew that in places like this, people were picky and dismissive. But she didn't expect to encounter such a thing one day. Little girl, I'm not leaving yet. Are you going to ask your boss? There's really no way to ask about this. If you don't like it, you can pay the original price of 560,000. I don't mind. How can a little girl like you talk like that? Xiang Caiping was furious. I've said it before. You're not your boss. You don't have the right to decide, do you? I don't, but I think I have the right to decide whether to ask the boss or not, right? The shop assistant's face was cold and he refused to go. The two were in a stalemate. Just then, Su Peijian walked in with a few noble ladies. Li Qianxue had a good friend whose birthday was next week. Li Qianxue had been very busy with work recently, so she asked Su Peijian to pick out a gift for her friend. When Su Peijian parked the car in front, she bumped into Luo Meishan's mother and Song Yoha's mother, who were also out shopping. Madame Luo and Madame Song had a good relationship with Li Qianxue. They naturally knew the people that Li Qianxue knew. It was Madame Luo and Madame Song's birthday the following week. Madame Luo and Madame Song also wanted to pick out a gift for Madame Luo. The three of them bumped into each other here. Su Peijian greeted the two aunties and suggested that they come to Bo Guzhai to take a look. Su Peijian saw Xiang Caiping as soon as she entered the room. Seeing her, the old and new hatred from the last slap in the face came flooding back. Su Peijian almost couldn't keep the calm smile on her face. Peijian, what's wrong? Madame Luo looked at Su Peijian and followed her gaze. That's nothing, just a mistress. She said the last sentence so softly that the other two didn't hear it clearly. Su Peijian was a regular customer of Bo Guzhai. Not only her, but Madame Luo and Madame Song also came often. A shop assistant who already knew them quickly came up to them when she saw the three of them. Miss Su, Madame Luo, Madame Song. Their attitude towards Xiang Caiping was completely different. The shop assistant smiled like a flower when she saw them. May I know what you are here to see today? Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to choose something. Instead, she looked in Xiang Caiping's direction. What's going on over there? That? The shop assistant had heard it just now. Hearing Su Peijian's question, she told her what happened in a low voice. She obviously has no money, but she likes to pretend to have money. She's already paid more than 300,000 yuan, and she's reluctant to leave tens of thousands behind. She even wants us to call her boss. Don't you think that's infuriating? The shop assistant spoke softly. After all, even if Xiang Caiping couldn't afford it, they couldn't openly offend a customer. Su Peijian snorted when she heard that, a hint of mockery appearing on her face. Madame Song and Madame Luo weren't interested in this matter and were about to choose a gift. Su Peijian turned to look at the two madams. Auntie Song, Auntie Luo. I know this customer who can't afford it. Since she can't afford the tens of thousands, why don't I help her out? When she said this, there was a flash of malice in her eyes. Madame Luo and Madame Song didn't see it, but since Su Peijian said she knew the customer, they let her be. Peijian, why don't you go first? We'll wait for you here. Auntie, you two can accompany me. Su Peijian hooked her arm around Madame Luo's. I'm just a little girl. I'm afraid that the auntie will be embarrassed and reject my good intentions. This? Madame Luo and Madame Song looked at each other and didn't object. Not to mention that the Su family was the most famous family in Lin City just based on their relationship with Li Qianxue, they had no reason not to help her. Just like that, the two of them followed Su Peijian to Xiang Caiping's side. Xiang Caiping didn't have to buy this piece of jade. However, the shop assistant's attitude annoyed her. She had to see the owner of the jade today. Miss, when you're doing business, everyone is a customer. Since you're not the owner, how can you make decisions for your boss? This piece of jade is of good quality. But 300,000 is good enough. I'm offering 390,000 just to get a good start. If you really want to do business, go and ask your boss now. Can you sell it? Auntie, I've already said we can't sell it. Auntie, what? Are you buying jade? Su Peijian had seen enough. She took a few steps forward and stood next to Xiang Caiping. She obviously didn't like Xiang Caiping, but she still called her affectionately. It was as if they knew each other very well. What's going on? When Xiang Kaiping saw Su Peijian, she was a little unhappy. She took a step back and her attitude was defensive and distant. Miss Su, this has nothing to do with you. Please step aside. Chapter 384. While speaking, Su Peijian glanced at the shop assistant. Didn't you hear? Ask your boss to come here. Miss Su? The shop assistant treated Su Peijian with a completely different attitude. She bowed and said awkwardly, I'll go get him now. She didn't have to give face to Xiang Kaiping, who was obviously poor. But she had to give face to Su Peijian. Yes, in business harmony makes money. Even if we can't afford it, there will be unreasonable people. We have to be nice. Don't you think so? Su Peijian seemed to be talking to the shop assistant, but she was actually looking at Xiang Kaiping. Her meaning was obvious. Don't buy it if you can't afford it. Don't look at it if you don't like it. Xiang Kaiping frowned. She really didn't like Su Peijian. Not only did she dislike her, but she also hated the girl when she thought of how Su Peijian had bullied Su Qingsang all these years. Miss Su, this has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me, but Su Qingsang and I are sisters. I should care about her mother, don't you think? Care. Was she here to watch the show? Xiang Kaiping didn't believe that Su Peijian would be so kind. Auntie, actually, if you really can't afford it, it's okay. I'll buy it for you. After all, I don't care about a few 100,000 yuan. Su Peijian said it casually, as if a few 100,000 yuan was just a few dozen yuan. Xiang Kaiping didn't like Su Peijian's attitude. In fact, she didn't understand. How could a gentleman like Su Qinghui have a daughter like that? No need. I can afford it. Really? Su Peijian didn't believe it. In her opinion, even if Hu Jinyao was rich, he wouldn't spend it on Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, came from an ordinary family. It was impossible for her to be rich. How could she afford a jade pendant that was worth a few 100,000 yuan? Was that a joke? Auntie, are you sure? It's better not to be so prideful. Su Peijian turned to look at the jade Buddha. She had good taste. She looked up at the shop assistant and asked, How much did you say it was? Miss Su, the original price of this jade is 550,000. For the new year, we are offering a 20% discount on all jade wares. After the 20% discount, it will be 440,000 yuan. 440,000. Su Peijian nodded and glanced at the jade Buddha statue. It's not expensive. Annie, I'll see you off. There's no need. I don't want it. Xiang Kaiping had been in the mood to pick out a gift for her daughter. There was nothing left now. She turned to leave, but Su Peijian stepped forward and blocked her way. Auntie, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I already said that I bought it for you. Why are you leaving? Get out of my way. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian. Her expression had already darkened. Take a look. As Su Peijian spoke, she glanced at Madame Luo and Madame Song. I'm doing this out of kindness. Look, this gift can't even be given away. Don't you think it's strange? If Madame Luo and Madame Song still couldn't tell that Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping weren't on good terms, they would have lived for so many years in vain. Madame Luo rolled her eyes and stepped forward to stand next to Xiang Kaiping. Madame Peijian is a good girl. Since she said that she would give it to you, you should just accept it. Yes. Madame Song also stepped forward and stood on the other side of Xiang Kaiping. I think it's rare for you to see a piece of jade like this in your life. That was really unpleasant to hear. Xiang Kaiping was being held by two people, one on the left and one on the right. Her expression was already quite unpleasant. Su Peijian. What do you mean by this? Auntie, look, why are you so nervous? I've told you everything. What if you can't afford this jade pendant? I'll buy it for you. I'm doing my best for Qingsang. Su Peijian suddenly looked at Xiang Kaiping. Alright. Why didn't Qingsang go shopping with you? Could it be that she didn't want to? Then I'll have to talk to her later. Don't go looking for her. From Xiang Caiping's point of view, her daughter was the best. Stay away from her. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. She stood there and glared at Xiang Kaiping. She felt that this woman was really annoying. And look, that's not right. I'm Qingsang's sister. How can I stay away from her? Madame Luo and Madame Song heard this and understood everything. The two of them looked at each other and saw a hint of understanding in each other's eyes. Back then, Li Qinshua disregarded her status and married a poor boy. That was a well-known joke in the upper class. What was even more ridiculous was that the poor boy had a childhood sweetheart. That childhood sweetheart even gave birth to an illegitimate daughter for the poor boy. This matter had almost spread throughout the upper class of Lin City. Now, looking at Su Peijian's attitude, this woman was Su Qinghui's mistress back then? Madame Luo and Madame Song looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. It was normal for the mistress to be at odds with the legal wife. They just didn't know what this mistress had done to annoy the eldest daughter of the Su family. Madame Luo and Madame Song were both smart people. Even if they had never been in the business world, they knew that their husbands usually interacted with people, and they were quite familiar with the situation in Lin City. Since Su Peijian wanted to vent her anger, they naturally had to help her vent her anger. On the other end, Xiang Kaiping heard Su Peijian's words. Not only did her expression not relax, but it also became even uglier. Qing Sang doesn't have a sister like you. Don't try to make connections. Of course, Su Peijian didn't want to acknowledge Su Qing Sang as a sister. However, not wanting to acknowledge her was different from Xiang Caiping's direct words. Auntie, I don't think you have the right to decide for Qing Sang whether to acknowledge me or not. After all, my relationship with Qing Sang is not something you can deny just because you want to. Xiang Kaiping stood still and looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song. She frowned slightly. Move aside. The boss isn't here yet. And don't rush. Su Peijian glanced at the shop assistant. What? Is your boss so arrogant now? I'm here with Auntie Luo and Auntie Song. Can't he come and greet us? Miss Su, what are you talking about? The boss is coming. As they spoke, a lean middle-aged man walked out from behind. I was wondering who it was. So it's Miss Su. And Madame Luo and Madame Song. Let me know if you need anything. I'll just bring it to your door. The boss had been in the jade business in Lin City for a long time and was quite familiar with Su Qinghui. He was more willing to give face to old Master Li. Chapter 385. Xiang Caiping's expression darkened. She no longer had any intention of buying the jade pendant. She tried to break free from Madame Luo and Madame Song. Madame Luo and Madame Song's hands were clinging tightly to her arm. What are you doing? Not only was Xiang Caiping's expression dark, but her voice was also cold. She looked at Su Peijian, feeling that this girl was too annoying. Ask them to move. Auntie, look, the boss is here. Don't you want it? Why don't you buy it? Su Peijian's mocking tone made people feel uncomfortable. Xiang Kaiping didn't want to buy it in the first place. This made her even angrier. Su Peijian, don't be like this. Auntie, look at you. How am I being like this? Didn't I say I would give it to you? Don't rush. I don't need you to give it to me. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian. It had nothing to do with her whether she was ugly or not. However, Su Qinghui had been such a gentleman when he was young, and now he had a daughter like this. Xiang Kaiping was truly emotional. Apart from feeling emotional, she also wanted to educate Su Peijian. Miss Su, as someone who has lived a few more years than you, I still want to give you some advice. You can't just look at the surface. Some people, some things. You don't understand, so don't say anything. Su Peijian didn't expect that one day she would be taught a lesson by a mistress like Xiang Kaiping. What did you say? Xiang Kaiping looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song coldly. She hadn't taken care of herself in the past few years, so she looked older than them. However, Madame Luo and Madame Song couldn't help but let go of her. Xiang Kaiping looked at the jade pendant on the counter. Boss, your staff just said that this jade pendant was discounted for 440,000 yuan. I don't like this number. I bought this jade Buddha as a gift. Just tell me if you can sell it for 390,000 yuan. If you can, I'll swipe my card now. The boss was stunned and looked at Xiang Kaiping. This jade pendant was indeed of good quality. However, he didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to be so straightforward. You can't sell it? Never mind then. Xiang Kaiping liked the jade Buddha very much. But it wasn't as if he couldn't get it. In fact, the price of 390,000 could still buy some good things. Excuse me. Yes, I can. It can be sold. After saying that, the boss wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead. You are Miss Su's friend. Of course I can sell it at this price. Xiang Kaiping was about to pay by card, but she paused for a moment because of the owner's words. Sell it if you can. If you can't sell it, then don't. I don't need to give face to anyone. It was not right for the boss to say yes or no. Su Peijian and the other two stood there without moving. They didn't speak at this time. They didn't plan to speak for the time being. Looks like I can't. Since this was the case. If that's the case, I won't be able to do business. Xiang Caiping's expression was indifferent. She had no intention of staying. He turned around and walked out. Madame Luo and Madame Luo glanced at Su Peijian. obviously waiting for her reaction. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Caiping's back and laughed coldly. If you can't afford it, just say it. Why do you have to say that you don't want to give me face? She turned to look at the boss of Bo Guzhai. Boss, you don't have to give me face. Just tell this Andy directly. Are you able to sell it or not? Miss Su, look at what you're saying. The boss finally saw through it. Su Peijian didn't get along with that woman just now. He had been in this business for a long time. His eyes were very sharp. That woman just now, he was afraid that she could really afford it. But he didn't want to offend Su Peijian. He thought about it. He came out from behind the counter and walked in front of Xiang Caiping. Madam, if you really want it, don't care whose face it is. What do you think? Just 390,000. If you want it, I'll have someone wrap it up for you. Xiang Caiping wanted to leave at first, but seeing the boss's attitude, she wasn't an unreasonable person. Boss, have you thought it through? This isn't a matter of giving face or not. Are you sure you can sell it? Yes, of course. It would be a fool not to do a business worth hundreds of thousands. The boss waved his hand and signaled for the clerk to wrap up the jade Buddha. Look, are you going to swipe it or transfer it? I'm old, I don't know how to use those transfer tools. Just swipe it. After saying this, Xiang Caiping followed the clerk to swipe her card. At this point, both Su Peijian and Madame Luo could see it. So Xiang Caiping was really rich? Madame Luo and Madame Song were fine. This was someone else's family business and they couldn't interfere. But Su Peijian's expression didn't look too good. She remembered that she had heard Li Qianxue mention it once. Su Qingsang's mother was just an ordinary person. So what did it mean for her to buy such an expensive jade pendant with her status? Su Peijian suddenly felt gloomy. She felt that Su Qinghui might have given Xiang Caiping money without her knowing. It meant that he didn't feel bad spending other people's money. Otherwise, how could he be so generous? Xiang Caiping didn't know what Su Peijian was thinking. After swiping her card, she took the jade pendant from the clerk's hand. The boss finally realized what had happened. He had heard about what had happened from the clerk in the shop. He glanced at the clerk again. The clerk's face was pale, and it was obvious that she regretted her poor judgment. After all, now that the boss was here, the commission from buying the jade pendant had nothing to do with her. The boss glared at the clerk. He suddenly felt that this clerk of Bo Guzhai needed more training. Seeing that Xiang Caiping was about to leave with the jade pendant, he signaled for the clerk to take out a bracelet that was priced at about 60,000. Madam, look, our clerk's attitude was not very good just now. He neglected you. The quality of this jade pendant is not bad. We'll give it to you as a gift. Please accept it. Next time you want something, come to Bo Guzhai again. Xiang Caiping glanced at the box in the boss's hand. Compared to Su Peijian, the boss was much more observant. Thank you. She accepted the jade pendant from the clerk's hand graciously. This way she had gotten a bargain. Next time I like something, I'll come again. After saying this, Xiang Caiping turned around and walked out. If Su Peijian had only been guessing whether Su Qinghui had given money to Xiang Caiping, now the boss's actions confirmed her suspicions. As soon as the woman swiped her card, the boss gave her a bracelet. What did it mean? It meant that the woman had swiped a card from someone the boss knew. She was overthinking and was certain that there was something going on between Xiang Caiping and Su Qinghui. Chapter 386. However, she still cared about her reputation. She couldn't start a fight with Xiang Caiping here. The only thing he could do now was to slowly think of a way to teach this woman a lesson. Su Peijian was still thinking about how to teach that woman a lesson. Madame Luo, who had been watching the show from the side, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. What's wrong? Auntie? The necklace I was wearing just now is gone. As Madame Luo spoke, Xiang Caiping had already walked to the door. Xiang Caiping heard her scream, but she didn't stop. Wasn't your necklace here just now? Mrs. Song quickly said. I saw it just now. Yes. Where's my necklace? Madame Luo's face was full of anxiety. She lowered her head and looked around, but she couldn't find it. Look again. Wasn't this necklace given to you by your old Luo? How about millions? That's right. Madame Luo panicked. She searched her body a few times and even her pockets, but there was nothing. She panicked and said without thinking, Did you see me wearing it just now? Did he enter the store? I didn't even notice. Could it have fallen in the car? Su Peijian looked at the anxious look on Madame Luo's face. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xiang Caiping had already walked out of Bo Guzhai. She suddenly used an extremely soft voice and spoke carelessly. Auntie, you were standing with that lady just now. Did you accidentally fall on her? Su Peijian said that she accidentally dropped it there, but the hidden meaning in her words was that Xiang Kaiping had taken it. The boss of Bo Guzhai watched this sudden turn of events without saying a word. The grudges between these people were not something a jade shop owner like him could interfere with. Madame Song seemed to have been reminded of something. Oh, that's right. She was standing so close just now. Who knows if she accidentally dropped it into her bag. Xiang Kaiping was carrying a huge bag. The label of a well-known wool brand was very eye-catching. Su Peijian didn't say anything else after that. Madame Luo and Madame Song went out together, blocking Xiang Caiping's way. Xiang Caiping's mood had been affected by the appearance of Su Peijian and the others. But now he had bought the jade pendant that he wanted to give to his daughter. She was in a good mood. There was a subway station nearby, but she wanted to take a taxi back. Anyway, it's not far. However, before she could reach the taxi, her path was blocked by someone. Let me have a look at your bag. Madame Luo spoke rather rudely. Xiang Kaiping frowned, clutched the two bags in her hands tightly and took a step back. What do you mean? What do you mean? Madame Luo's necklace was her favorite necklace. Her husband had given it to her on her birthday. Now that she saw Xiang Kaiping carrying the bag, she couldn't help but wonder if she had dropped it. I lost my necklace. I suspect it fell into your bag. Bring it over and let me check it. Just now, Madame Luo and Madame Song had each grabbed her hand and refused to let her go. Xiang Kaiping was already quite unhappy. That would be even more outrageous for these two. Was he implying that she had taken something? Xiang Caiping's face darkened. She looked very gloomy. Get out of my way. I won't have what you want in this bag. If you don't let me see it, then you have a guilty conscience. Seeing her like this, Madame Luo felt that she was even more suspicious. Don't think that you are rich just because you bought a jade pendant and spent hundreds of thousands. Let me tell you, my necklace is worth millions. If you are smart, hurry up and take it out. Otherwise, I will call the police. Call the police? Xiang Kaiping wanted to laugh. If you want to call the police, go ahead. I said it. I didn't take it. What a rude attitude. Madame Luo didn't want to be polite. She and Li Qinxue had a good personal relationship. Since this woman was the mistress from back then, she would teach her a lesson and help Li Qinxue vent her anger. Do you think you didn't take it just because you said you didn't? Bring me the bag, I want to check it. Sorry? You don't have the right. Xiang Kaiping had been doing business for a few years. What kind of people hadn't she seen? She naturally understood a person like Madame Luo. She bullied the weak and feared the strong. To put it bluntly, she was just a fox pretending to be a tiger. I don't have the right? Madame Luo didn't even care that she was on the road. I lost my necklace. I suspect that it fell in your hands. If you don't let me see it, you must be up to no good. Madame Luo was too sharp and aggressive. Xiang Caiping's expression was calm and unhurried. Madame Song glanced at her from the side and took a step forward. Madam, since you really didn't take the necklace, why don't you let us check it? We're just taking a look. Nothing will happen. Isn't it more suspicious for you to hide it from us like this? Xiang Kaiping glanced at Madame Song coldly. She had no doubt that these two women were deliberately making things difficult for her. She looked at Su Peijian, who had been watching from the side without saying a word. Speaking of which, Miss Su must have been instigating this. She really didn't like this girl. She was sharp, petty, and not magnanimous. More importantly, she had the heart but not the guts. She obviously didn't get along with her, but she didn't come forward herself. Instead, she pushed the other two elders who could almost be her mother. Li Qinxue was such a capable person. How could she raise such a daughter? Thinking about it, she found it really interesting. I will say it again, I didn't take it. My bag is fine too. My bag is fine too. I don't think I will have what you want. Please move aside. She had put the jade pendant and the jade bracelet into her bag carefully. One of the two bags was for knitting a scarf for Su Qingsang, and the other was for Huo Jinyao. The knitting was secondary. She didn't want these people to touch her things. Madame Luo didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to be so rude. She was annoyed. I think it fell in your bag. Give it to me. Xiang Kaiping didn't expect that Madame Luo would dare to hit her. Instinctively, she tried to protect her bag and put it behind her. Unexpectedly, Madame Song saw it and came forward to help. Xiang Kaiping panicked and dodged to the side. She had suffered a lot when she was young, so she was naturally stronger than Madame Luo and Madame Song. However, the two of them were standing on the side of the road. She looked at Madame Luo's outstretched hand and dodged to the middle of the road without thinking. It was not rush hour, but there were still many cars on the road. Behind them, a car happened to be driving in their direction. Chapter 387. Even Su Peijian was stunned by the sudden turn of events. However, the women didn't react at all. They just stared at Xiang Kaiping blankly, even forgetting to reach out to help her. Under the shocked gazes of the three of them, Xiang Caiping's body was sent flying by the car. The scene seemed to freeze at that moment. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. Su Peijian watched the woman's body fly. Then she fell. The moment Xiang Kaiping fell, she was still thinking about the jade pendant she had bought for her daughter. She held the bag in her hands tightly. The bag flew out and her body hit a telephone pole by the side of the road. Then she fell. With a screech, Xiang Caiping's body rolled on the ground, then came to a complete stop. The driver got out of the car. Su Peijian and the others seemed to have finally come to their senses and went forward together. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Kaiping lying in a pool of blood. There was only one thought in her mind. She couldn't be dead, could she? When Hua Jinyao received the news and rushed to the hospital, Xiang Kaiping was already in the operating room. In the corridor, other than Madame Luo and Madame Song, Su Peijian was also there. When he saw her, Hua Jinyao slightly narrowed his eyes. His aura was shocking and Su Peijian couldn't help but shrink back. Su Qinghui also rushed over after receiving the news. He was in a meeting and came immediately after receiving the news. When he saw the guilty faces of Madame Luo and Madame Song, he was not in the mood to greet them. He only looked at Su Peijian. Peijian, what happened? He wasn't the only one who wanted to know. Hua Jinyao also wanted to know. He took a few steps forward and stood in front of Su Peijian. His cold eyes swept over her face without any warmth. I don't know either. Su Peijian was a little spoiled and a little willful. She had never taken anyone's life. Now that Xiang Kaiping had been hit by a car and her life was uncertain, she began to feel afraid. That I really don't know. Enough. Su Qinghui's expression was a little ugly. It was rare for him to be so strict with Su Peijian. Tell me what happened. If she didn't know, how could she have sent Xiang Kaiping to the hospital? Su Peijian was Su Qinghui's biological daughter. If she was so frightened, Madame Luo and Madame Song were even more afraid to speak. Hua Jinyao took a step forward and stood beside Su Qinghui. He stared at Su Peijian's face with sharp eyes. Miss Su, I suggest that you speak clearly. After all, there are surveillance cameras at the place where you just had a car accident. I just need to look at the surveillance and I can see everything. Su Peijian was even more afraid now. She swallowed and looked at her father and Hua Jinyao's gloomy faces. She told them what had happened in a very low voice. Of course, she simplified some things as much as possible. But how smart was Hua Jinyao? Just by listening to a few words, one could deduce half of the cause and effect. Stop talking about him. Even Su Qinghui could tell. Based on what happened today, it was obvious that Su Peijian wanted to make life difficult for Xiang Kaiping. Madame Luo and Madame Song were merely her helpers. After listening to the scene of Xiang Kaiping being hit by the car, Hua Jinyao was stunned. Su Qinghui couldn't take it anymore. He raised his hand and slapped Su Peijian's face. Su Peijian was stunned by the loud and heavy slap. Her face quickly swelled up. She covered her face and didn't dare to come back to her senses for a long time. Dad, you hit me? Yes, I hit you. Su Qinghui was very angry. He only felt a terrible headache. His head was buzzing. Su Peijian didn't dare to speak. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Half of it was because of the pain, and the other half was because she felt wronged. How dare Su Qinghui slap her in front of so many people? The humiliation was enough to make her cry. What did I say to you? What did I say to you? He had repeatedly told her to stay away from Xiang Kaiping and not to provoke her. But Su Peijian? She didn't listen to him at all. Instead, she turned a deaf ear to his words. How could he not be angry? Su Qinghui was so angry that his chest rose and fell violently. The huge anger made him completely lose his cool. Not only was he angry, but he was also disappointed and guilty. If Xiang Kaiping woke up one day and found out that it was Su Peijian who caused her car accident, what would she do? Su Qinghui didn't dare to think about it. Compared to his agitated self, Hua Jinyao was much calmer. Su Peijian naturally wanted to teach her a lesson. However, Su Qinghui's slap made him not rush to teach Su Peijian a lesson. His slender legs took a step forward, his tall body standing in front of Madame Luo and Madame Song. Madame Luo? Madame Song? Madame Luo and Madame Song were ordinary rich ladies. They usually went shopping, dressed up, and socialized with their husbands. They went to the spa and gossiped. Even if they looked down on people from a certain class, they wouldn't think of harming others. Now that Xiang Kaiping was in a car accident, both of them were frightened. Hu Jinyao's cold gaze suddenly swept over them. Their bodies trembled like leaves in the wind. Madams, I really didn't know that Hu Jinyao's mother-in-law would go and take a necklace worth millions from you. Madame Luo and Madame Song trembled even more. They didn't dare to respond to Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao stared at their frightened faces. He didn't plan to let it go just like that. Madame Xiang Kaiping is my wife's mother, my mother-in-law. Are you sure that she took your necklace? No. The two of them shook their heads quickly and snuggled up to each other tightly, almost hugging each other. Hu Jinyao snorted. That's good. After all, it's better to get to the bottom of this. Madams, don't you think so? Of course. Madame Luo and Madame Song were frightened. Hu Jinyao didn't think it was enough. Madame Luo, I remember that your family runs a department store business, right? Yes. Madame Luo didn't understand what Hu Jinyao wanted. Luoxing department store, Hu Jinyao added. Madame Luo's face turned even paler. Madame Song's family runs a retail and electronics business? Hu Jinyao had seen them at the party. Madame Song looked at Hu Jinyao with a pale face. What do you mean, President Hua? What did he mean? Hu Jinyao took out his phone and dialed a few numbers. He looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song on the phone. It's me. From now on, I will buy the shares of Luoxing Department Store and Kusong Group. Chapter 388. As soon as he said that, Madame Song and Madame Luo's bodies went limp and they fell to the ground. They looked at Hu Jinyao in disbelief. Madame Luo took a long time to gather her courage. Oh. President Hua, you can't do this. If that person in her family knew about this, her good days would come to an end. She was really nervous, so nervous that her voice began to tremble. There's nothing I can't do. Hu Jinyao hung up the phone, his expression extremely cold. He looked down at the two of them, his eyes emotionless. Everyone has to bear the consequences of their actions. You're not children anymore, are you? Big drops of sweat rolled down Madame Song's forehead. Madame Luo thought about the anger she might have toward her husband when she got home. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Hu Jinyao didn't look at the two people on the ground. He went straight to Su Peijian, who was still crying and had a pale face. He glanced at Su Peijian's face. The others had already packed up. She was the only one left now. You. Su Peijian had heard what Hu Jinyao said. She couldn't believe that Hu Jinyao would really do that. Just because of a small dispute? What about me? Hu Jinyao was patient with Su Qingsang, but it didn't mean that he was patient with others. Su Qinghui frowned. Under Hu Jinyao's dark gaze, he discreetly stepped in front of Su Peijian. Jinyao, if there's anything, wait for Kaiping to come out. Hu Jinyao curled his lips slightly and looked at Su Qinghui mockingly. Dad, are you saying that I should just let it go? I've already hit her. When Su Qinghui said this, he didn't sound very confident. Hu Jinyao smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes at all. If Su Qingsang were here, she would know how rare it was to see Hu Jinyao, who was always smiling in front of her. Dad, what I mean is, she. He raised his hand and casually pointed in Su Peijian's direction. She caused Su Qingsang's mother to get into a car accident, and you think that a slap is enough? Su Peijian's body trembled at the meaning of his words. She instinctively stood beside Su Qinghui. Even though she had just been slapped by Su Qinghui didn't make her feel as scared as Hu Jinyao. Su Qinghui naturally felt his daughter's fear. He took a few steps to the side, half blocking Su Peijian's body. Jinyao. That's not what I meant. I mean, there's nothing more important than Kaiping right now. Xiang Kaiping was still in the emergency room. Even if Hu Jinyao wanted to punish Su Peijian, he would have to wait until she woke up. That's not a conflict. Hu Jinyao raised his chin and his eyes were sharp. The surgery won't end so soon anyway. I just happen to have time to settle the accounts. Jinyao, I'm afraid Qingsang won't agree with your decision, right? Qingsang is not here now. What? Can't I make the decision for you? That's not what I mean. What do you mean, Dad? Hu Jinyao took a step forward and stood in front of Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was not short. He was 1.8 meters tall. However, in front of Hu Jinyao, who was 1.8 meters tall, he was still a little less imposing. Hu Jinyao, I didn't say that this matter is over. But Kaiping is still in the operating room. Before he could finish his words, a nurse had already come out. Su Qinghui and Hu Jinyao thought that the surgery was over. They immediately went forward to ask the nurse about the situation. The nurse understood their feelings and explained briefly, "The surgery is not over yet. The patient is bleeding heavily. We're going to the blood bank to get type O blood now." The nurse was about to run to get the plasma as she spoke. Hua Jinyao looked at the nurse's face. He asked worriedly, "Do you have enough blood in the blood bank?" "Yes. Our hospital has more than enough type O blood." After saying this, the nurse ran away. Hua Jinyao was not completely relieved, but he was more or less relieved. He turned to look at Su Qinghui and found that his expression was a little strange. He thought that he was worried about Xiang Kaiping and sneered. "I've already called Qing Sang to inform her that I really want to know how you plan to explain to Qing Sang when she comes back." Didn't he stop him from punishing Su Peijian now? He didn't believe that he could stop him for a while, but he couldn't stop him forever. "I don't need to explain this matter to Qing Sang. I only need to explain to Xiang Kaiping." Su Qinghui was very worried about Xiang Kaiping now. Not only was he worried, but he also blamed himself. He didn't expect that he couldn't stop Su Peijian from causing trouble for Xiang Kaiping. However, under the current situation, he couldn't let Hua Jinyao deal with Su Peijian first. After all, Su Peijian was Xiang Caiping's daughter, her biological daughter. "Is that so?" Hua Jinyao sneered and looked at Su Peijian, who was still pale. "I hope you can say the same thing when Qing Sang comes back." "Jinyao, we're family. Is it a family?" Hua Jinyao interrupted him rudely and glanced in Su Peijian's direction. "Can you make Qing Sang's mother get into a car accident just because we're family?" Su Peijian was already guilty and didn't dare to say anything, but Hua Jinyao's words made her feel very unconvinced. I didn't do it on purpose." Hua Jinyao's eyes were like arrows. "You made her get into a car accident without doing it on purpose. Then if you did it on purpose, wouldn't you want to kill her?" Su Peijian still wanted to say something, but Su Qinghui glared at her and said, "Shut up." Su Peijian didn't dare to say anything. The nurse came back with the type O blood and rushed into the operating room. Hua Jinyao was in no mood to pay attention to Su Peijian. He rushed over from the company and had a lot of things to deal with. His phone didn't stop ringing. He answered a few calls. Not long after, his assistant came over with a laptop and a pile of documents. Hua Jinyao was dealing with work in the corridor when his phone rang again. He was about to hang up but quickly picked up when he saw that it was Su Qing Sang. "Qing Sang? How's my mother?" Su Qing Sang's voice was full of panic. "I've already bought the plane ticket. It'll take off in half an hour. Tell me first, how's my mother?" "Mom is still in surgery." Hua Jinyao glanced at the operating room. "I don't know the details yet. We'll only know when the doctor comes out." "Why did she get into a car accident?" Su Qing Sang's face was full of anxiety. "And why is she still in surgery? Hasn't it been a long time?" "Yes. The situation might be a little complicated." Chapter 389. Hua Jinyao didn't see it with his own eyes. According to the situation at the time, Xiang Caiping's body was sent flying and then fell to the ground. It was likely that her internal organs were damaged. He just didn't know where he fell. He didn't know much about this, so he didn't know what would happen. Then, Su Qing Sang used to be a doctor, so she was used to calming the patient's family down. But when it really happened to her, she realized that she couldn't stay calm at all. "Calm down first." He decided to take a nap after boarding the plane. "I'll send someone to pick you up. You don't have to worry. I believe Mom will be fine." Hua Jinyao, She couldn't calm down or believe him. She had just acknowledged Xiang Kaiping as her mother, and she had just developed a mother-daughter relationship with her. She thought she could make up for the motherly love she had missed for the past 20 years. But now, she was afraid that she would lose the motherly love that she had just received. Hearing Su Qing Sang's panicked voice, Hua Jinyao's heart ached slightly. He could understand Su Qing Sang. It was like a drowning man catching a piece of driftwood. Those who had lost their loved ones would never be willing to lose their loved ones again. Thinking of the blow Su Qing Sang would suffer if something really happened to Xiang Kaiping, he couldn't find a way to comfort her. He heard a rustling sound. Su Qing Sang seemed to have taken the phone away from her. Hua Jinyao took a deep breath and was about to comfort her when he heard a male voice on the other end of the phone. "Junior sister, don't be like this. I believe Andy will be fine." Hua Jinyao's hand, which was holding the phone, froze. "Zhuo Hongchen? It's him, right? Why did he go to Song City?" Su Qing Sang didn't say anything but just shook her head. "Junior Marshal sister, don't be like this. Auntie is still waiting for you to take care of her." Su Qing Sang glanced at him, thought about his words and finally nodded. "That's more like it." Zhuangchen had a surgery with the people from Song City Central Hospital today. As soon as she finished the surgery, she saw Su Qingsang coming to the hospital office in a panic to ask for leave, saying that she wanted to go back to Lin City. It was the first time he had seen such an expression on Su Qingsang's face. After asking, he found out that something had happened to Su Qingsang's mother. He knew that Su Qingsang was an illegitimate daughter and had always thought that she didn't have a mother by her side. But now he knew that wasn't the case. Taking off his scrubs, he accompanied her to the airport. He had planned to go back with Su Qingsang. However, he was one of the backbone this time and Su Qingsang had left. He couldn't be so willful. "Senior brother, I'm fine. Thanks for driving me here. I'll board the plane myself later." "Then be careful." Zhuangchen was still very worried. However, it was obvious that Su Qingsang wanted to be alone. "You can go back. I'm going in now." Su Qingsang took the suitcase from Zhuangchen's hand and was about to enter the gate when she realized that her phone was still on. She was stunned for a moment, but she couldn't care about anything else now. "Jinyao? I'm here." Hua Jinyao hadn't hung up the phone, so naturally he heard the conversation between Su Qingsang and Zhuangchen. He wasn't jealous, but he definitely felt a little uncomfortable. Zhuangchen's intentions were too obvious. Everyone could see it. "Get on the plane first and get a good night's sleep. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it when you come back." Su Qingsang didn't say anything. In fact, it was really difficult to calm down at a time like this. "Qingsang, listen to me." Hua Jinyao's voice was very calm. "Our mother is still waiting for you to take care of her. If you keep this attitude, even if you come back, you won't be able to take good care of our mother." Strangely, the same words that Zhuangchen had said just now didn't calm her down as much as Hua Jinyao did now. She nodded lightly and suppressed the tears in her eyes. "I know. Thank you, Hua Jinyao." She looked at the people queuing up in front of her, put away her phone and walked into the gate. When Hua Jinyao called, Su Qinghui was also there. Mrs. Song was no longer there. Mrs. Luo had fainted and asked someone to help her to see a doctor. Su Peijian wanted to leave but couldn't. She was ordered by Su Qinghui to stay there. She could only sit on the other side of the bench in a daze, not moving. Su Qinghui heard Hua Jinyao's words. The look in his eyes was very complicated. Su Qingsang was coming back to take care of Xiang Kaiping? In fact, the person who should be taking care of Xiang Kaiping at this time should be Su Peijian. He looked at Su Peijian with some disappointment in his eyes. He had been working hard to give the best to Su Peijian. He had been educating Su Peijian. Since she was in high school, he had brought her with him and asked her to help with some business matters. He had also been very diligent in cultivating Su Peijian. She had been dancing, playing piano, calligraphy, and playing chess since she was a child. Su Peijian was also smart and attentive. However, she had learned so much, but he had forgotten to give her a good personality. He had always felt that as long as he was there, he would always be able to protect Su Peijian. She was a girl, so what if she was a little spoiled? Couldn't his daughter be a little spoiled? However, he didn't expect so many things to happen later. Now, Su Peijian had a conflict with Xiang Kaiping. Not only did the conflict happen, but Xiang Kaiping was also hurt. Su Qinghui really couldn't tell what he was feeling. If he could, he actually wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson. However, he was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel bad if she knew. After struggling for a while, Su Qinghui's expression became a little ugly. Hua Jinyao didn't know that Su Qinghui's ugly expression was because of these struggles. He saw that Su Qinghui still had some conscience and knew that he was worried about Xiang Kaiping. He didn't care about him for the time being. He planned to deal with these business matters first, and when Su Qingsang came back, he could accompany her. 2 hours later, Xiang Kaiping finally came out of the operating room. At the same time, Su Qingsang's plane had also landed in Lin City. Hua Jinyao had already arranged for someone to pick her up. Now he was more concerned about Xiang Kaiping. "Doctor, how is my mother?" The spleen ruptured and caused a lot of bleeding. In addition, her lumbar vertebra was fractured and she hit her head. She has a slight concussion. Right. Did the patient hurt her lumbar vertebra before? Yes. Hua Jinyao remembered the fall in Rong City. At that time he thought that Xiang Kaiping was faking it, but he didn't expect that it was a real fall. Then be careful next time. We have already corrected her bones through surgery. But for the rest of the time, it's best that the patient doesn't move. She needs to rest in bed. Then she will slowly undergo rehabilitation. Okay, I understand. Hua Jinyao nodded, but he was still a little worried. It would take 100 days to recover from an injury, not to mention that Xiang Kaiping was not young anymore. After the fall last time, he didn't pay attention to it anymore, nor did he ask about it. Chapter 390. Hearing that, Su Qinghui almost couldn't stand still. Xiang Kaiping would be paralyzed? He looked at the doctor nervously for fear that he would say something bad. She won't be paralyzed. However, I'm afraid that the patient won't be able to exert force on her lumbar spine for a long time. She'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. The doctor understood the family's concerns. Rehabilitation will be good in the future. It won't affect her movements. But you still have to be careful. After all, she's not young anymore. If the rehabilitation is not good, I'm afraid that the disease will be permanent. Okay, we'll be careful. Hua Jinyao began to plan to hire professional care workers, nutritionists and physiotherapists. When the patient was in the car accident, she fell on her head. We've already examined her. Other than a concussion, there was no intracranial bleeding. It shouldn't be a big problem. The most serious is the hemorrhage caused by the rupture of the spleen. The patient also went into shock several times during the surgery because of the hemorrhage. After the surgery, we've repaired the ruptured spleen. However, the body is weak because of the hemorrhage. Will take some time to recover. Good doctor, does that mean that she has no other problems now? Not for the time being. The patient's anesthesia hasn't worn off yet. When she wakes up, you can call us for a detailed examination. After all, a head injury could be serious or minor. Although the examination had been done, the results would only be known when the patient woke up. Thank you, doctor. Hua Jinyao took care of the rest. He didn't let Su Qinghui get involved at all. When Su Qingsang arrived at the hospital, Xiang Kaiping was already in the ward. Hua Jinyao was sitting not far from the bed. There was a laptop in front of him and a pile of reports and documents beside him. He seemed to be very busy. Yang Wenchang stood behind her with a few documents in his hand, obviously waiting for Hua Jinyao to sign. Jinyao? Wife. Hua Jinyao saw her and stood up immediately. Su Qingsang didn't look at him but rushed to the bed. How is my mother? How is she? Xiang Caiping's face was pale and she lay motionless on the bed. Su Qingsang's eyes were red. She really wished that she was the one who got into the car accident. Hua Jinyao signed the documents in his hand and handed them to Yang Wenchang, gesturing for him to leave. After Yang Wenchang left with the documents, he stepped forward and stood in front of Su Qingsang. Your mom is fine for now. Hua Jinyao knew what she was thinking and repeated the doctor's words. That's the situation. The anesthetic hasn't worn off yet. Plus, he lost too much blood before, so he might only wake up tomorrow. Excessive blood loss? Did you get a blood transfusion? I lost 600 cc. 600. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping, her eyes full of heartache. What about now? Are you all right now? Sort of. Rehabilitation is very important. Hua Jinyao didn't intend to hide it from her, so he told her about the problem with Xiang Caiping's lumbar spine. Su Qingsang looked guilty. It's all my fault. He should have paid more attention to it when he was in Rong City. I shouldn't have come back when my mom asked me to take care of her. What if she falls ill? Don't worry. It'll be fine. Hua Jinyao held her hand tightly. You didn't know her identity at that time, did you? Furthermore, we will hire the best physiotherapist and doctor to treat him. I think he'll be fine. Su Qingsang didn't say anything but nodded vigorously. Hua Jinyao held her hand, only to find that it was very cold. He felt a little sad and helpless. He held her hand tightly and put it in his arms. Your hand is so cold. Didn't Wenchang turn on the air conditioner when he went to pick you up? He did. Su Qingsang shook her head, her eyes still on Xiang Kaiping. I just feel uneasy. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. Su Qingsang was in a bad mood, so she opened the car window for some fresh air. However, her hands and face were cold from the wind. Reaching out, he pulled her body into his embrace. He hugged her tightly and forcefully. Wife, you don't need to feel uneasy. There is no need to be unsettled. You are not alone. You have me. Su Qingsang didn't look up. Her face was still pressed against his chest. She looked at Xiang Kaiping. Why do you think my mom has such a hard life? In the first half of her life, her lover was taken away and separated from her own flesh and blood. In the second half of her life, she thought she could finally enjoy some happiness. However, something like this happened. Hua Jinyao, I really wish that I was the one who got into the car accident. That way, wife. Hua Jinyao suddenly held her shoulders and made her look into his eyes. Don't say things like that. Su Qingsang looked at him blankly. Hua Jinyao's expression was quite serious and serious. Your mom is very important to you, but you are also very important to me. Su Qingsang bit her lip and couldn't find her voice for a long time. Finally, she nodded gently. I understand. Wife, I hope you understand. You can call me selfish or cold-blooded. But I'm really glad that you weren't the one who got into an accident. Otherwise, Hu Jiniao couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't do something crazy. Su Qingsang was shocked by his expression. Her uneasy heart calmed down a lot. She reached out and hugged Hu Jiniao. She looked at Xiang Kaiping, whose face was as pale as a sheet. Hu Jiniao, I won't say this anymore. I just hope that my mom will be fine now. Don't worry. She will be fine. I hope so. Su Qingsang closed her eyes. Studying in Song City for more than a week had been a very happy thing. After all, she could exchange ideas and learn from so many seniors. But now, all that happiness had turned into self-blame. She was very regretful and upset. If she had known, she wouldn't have gone to Song City. If she hadn't gone, Xiang Kaiping might have been fine. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang suddenly let go. She took a step back and looked at Hu Jiniao. By the way, where is the person who hit my mom? Where is he? Hu Jiniao frowned and thought about what to say. What's wrong? Escape? You didn't catch him? Su Qingsang only heard Hu Jiniao say that Xiang Kaiping was hit by a car. She didn't say who hit her. I've already sent that person to the traffic police. Hu Jiniao's voice was calm. Thinking of Su Peijian, he decided to tell her about it. In fact, although your mom got into a car accident because that person drove a little too fast, you can't completely blame him. But the person who caused her car accident can't be completely blamed on that person. What do you mean? Su Qingsang suddenly became nervous. Hu Jiniao didn't hide anything and told her about Su Peijian. He was objective. When Xiang Caiping's surgery was over, he asked someone to pull up the surveillance video. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.